across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. There's been a royal bombshell, and we're still picking up the pieces in regard to Prince Andrew, or more accurately, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. That is what he will be known as now. We'll talk at all the implications, get at this from every angle. We heard from Kinsey Schofield with Mark, of course. We've got royal historians, constitutional experts. This is a major, major change. And the King, I think, actually defied so many of the royal experts and commentators who didn't see this coming. We thought this wasn't going to happen. And then, of course, it did, and it's happened to a huge extent, a huge degree. This is a major, major change. There's lots of reaction on the show today, and I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Isabel Oakeshott will join us shortly to talk about Nigel Farage being compared to Hitler by Zara Sultana, who is the leader, or was the co-leader, no one quite knows, of your party or whatever it's called. Also, Just Stop Oil, pretty unbelievably, have been acquitted by a jury. Activists who spread Stonehenge with orange powder have been cleared following a jury trial. We'll look at the footage of what they did and what their excuse was for it. We'll talk about migration as well. We'll talk about Rachel Reeves, who seems to be being vindicated. Big story yesterday, less so today because of Andrew, of course, but an estate agent, and actually a revelation coming on that from Isabel Oakeshott in a few minutes' time. So stay with us here on Talk, because there's so much to talk about. The sport, we'll talk about what's in the sun as well. Loads to discuss between now and 7, and I want to make sure that you get your voice on the air. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word Talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm on tomorrow as well between 10 and 1, and indeed on Sunday between 10 and 1. So let's get started here on Talk Drive today. Well, so much has happened since we last spoke. It was just shortly after Drive yesterday that that bombshell statement came from the palace in regard to Prince Andrew. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says he fully supports Buckingham Palace's decision to strip Andrew of his titles. He says our hearts go out to Virginia Giuffre's family, and his utmost sympathies remain with victims and survivors. Virginia Giuffre's brother today has said that Andrew should be investigated, and of course Andrew has now been stripped of his prince title. He is known now as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Well, earlier the Trade Minister, Chris Bryant, said the government agreed with the King's decision.
I warmly support what the King is doing today. I think that the vast majority of people in this country will think that it's the right thing to do. You know, when you think of what Virginia Giuffre and other victims went through in the whole situation with Jeffrey Epstein, I think everybody will come to the conclusion that the King's doing the right thing, and we stand ready to support whatever the King thinks is necessary for us to do in this regard.
Well, how will it all work? How will the process actually work? We'll talk about that a little bit later on with Daniel Britton, who is a political, constitutional and royal historian. He knows all the nuts and bolts of this. And now I'm delighted to say, to Grant Harold, who's author of The Royal Butler. Grant, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on.
How much of a shock was this to you?
It wasn't a huge shock. I mean, I had a feeling that I didn't quite expect the King to be the one kind of taking the titles away, but I had a feeling this was going to happen. I had a feeling that his titles would be taken away, and I also had a feeling that he would have to leave Royal Lodge. But it's all happened a lot quicker than I thought. But then on the other hand, kind of looking at people's views and comments online, it potentially should have happened a lot sooner, actually, when you think about it.
Yes, and actually maybe the King has acted swiftly in this, but maybe it's been a long time coming. What do you think, Grant?
I think it has. I mean, this has been going on for quite a few years now, and I think, you know, the difficult thing is, I think they've realised, I think the royal family, you know, the King and his advisors have realised this is a lot more serious than probably what they ever imagined. Because if you think about it, this should have been, the things that they're doing now possibly should have been done many years ago. And I think this is why on that statement, it's really interesting, as it's been pointed out, the last comments about obviously, about the thoughts of the thoughts of the victims and those affected. Now, that's quite a bold statement, and obviously they're thinking or realizing that they haven't said that he's guilty, and nobody said he's guilty, but I think
he denies all the allegations, it must be said. Yeah,
exactly. But I think they're bracing themselves. I think they're actually getting ready for a worst case scenario, and by taking away his titles and everything is what they feel is the right thing to do. Someone actually said to me earlier on, but why, did the king not do something sooner? There's several reasons. One is he probably promised his late mother that he would look after Andrew. It's also been noted that even though he's lost his titles and he's home, the king appears to be still going to be financing him in some shape or form.
Well, he's giving him a free house, certainly, and Andrew will need some money to live on as well.
Yeah.
Knowing the king as you do, I know you were his butler when he was Prince of Wales, I just wonder, is he a cautious person? Is he someone who takes a while to make a decision? Is he influenced by other people? What's your view of him in terms of his character?
He's a very caring individual. He doesn't like to jump into things too quick without knowing all the details. And interesting what you said a minute ago about being advised. He has got a team of advisors, and if anyone wants to start blaming or pointing fingers or saying, the king should have got this right sooner or whatever, you've got to look to the advisors, because the advisors are there to keep the king right, and it's their duty. So they should have probably kind of, if not foreseen it, they should have maybe acted quicker, possibly. So I think if people start kind of saying, well, the king should have done some a lot sooner. Yes, I get what they're saying, but the thing about the monarchy, the way it runs, is the king's obviously the head of state and carries out the duties as a king, but he has got a team around him who are there to keep him right, to advise him, to guide him. And you can guarantee that he would have been seeking their advice the whole way through this. And I'm kind of imagining today that possibly maybe heads will be rolling, because, this is a bit of a, can I say, a disaster. I think the king will see it as a disaster and think why. He'll probably be wondering why has it got to this point, I think.
Yeah. It's interesting that we're told apparently he made the decision himself. It wasn't William putting pressure on him necessarily. I wonder, in your experience, what the relationship is like between Charles and Andrew.
They got on. I mean, when I was ever around Andrew, they were always, they seemed to get on quite well. I mean, the thing about with Andrew, I was never, can I say, a massive fan, and it wasn't he was ever rude to me or anything, but he was always very dismissive. You were made to feel that you were there stuff, basically, and it was interesting because no other member of the royal family ever made you kind of feel like that. But he had a way of kind of doing that. But
how did he do that? What was his attitude?
Just very dismissive, very dismissive. Very, you open my door for him and he just walks out. I'll give you an example. The king would always say thank you. The queen would always say thank you. And he would just walk out. He wasn't rude to me or anything like that at all. I was there to do a job and that was my job. But I was not, if I can say I was not a fan. Yeah. And I also remember the king's wedding. He was at the king's wedding. And I remember most members of the royal family come up and chatted to myself and my colleagues, but he didn't. So that just gives you an idea of his kind of character. He's very different.
He felt you were beneath him?
Probably, yes. I think he probably would. I think that's the feedback I've also had from other colleagues when you kind of talk about him and you heard stories about him. I think he was very much, it's very interesting. I think his upbringing isn't extraordinary. They were all brought up relatively the same way, but for some reason he's just got a very different, he's built very differently. His thought process is very different, and you can see he's very dismissive. I heard recently that there was an incident apparently in the park at Windsor was, I don't know, some builders or somebody doing something, and it got in his way, and apparently he was quite kind of straight to the point to this individual, and again it's that entitled kind of thing, that's which is ironic that that's the name of this book, obviously. That
yes, Andrew Loney, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and he certainly had that entitled presence with you. And I mean, how do you think he will be reacting, knowing him to some extent or experiencing him certainly? How do you think he will be reacting to this today? Do you think he'll just get on with it and say and accept his fate, or will he be annoyed about it?
He'll accept it, but he'll be furious. He'll be absolutely furious. No two ways about it. Knowing his character and the kind of know what he's like through others that have obviously kind of told me his character. And this is somebody that could get angry at the simplest of things, let alone losing his home, his titles, his peerage, everything. He's lost everything. And, you know, you can imagine that he will literally be he'll probably be furious. He'll probably but there's also the other part you've got to remember is, as someone pointed out to me, that he is at the end of the day, he's a human being. He's also going to suffer mentally from this, and it's probably going to affect him, and you know, he's possibly could even affect his mental health as well.
Do you have any sympathy for him, Grant?
I don't have sympathy. I think what I kind of think is that I just, you know, you kind of think to yourself, why could he not see all those years ago what was happening? That's what the bit I don't get. That's why there's not really sympathy, because he could have done something. I think initially, yes, if I'm honest, initially there was a bit of sympathy, thinking maybe it's becoming a witch hunt and this kind of thing. But then as time went on and evidence became stronger and stronger, and as I said, even though he's not been proven of anything, you're kind of thinking, why not work with the police? Not, you know, why not open yourself up and assist the family and that kind of thing. And I know it's not what royals normally do, but this is a serious incident. And maybe if he'd done that, you know, maybe things have been slightly different. But I think the fact they've taken these titles away, they just wouldn't do that. It's just, you know, the last time it was done was in 1919, and that was to do with German relatives that lost their title.
Yes, after the war, after the First World War. Tell me what your experience of Sarah Ferguson is and how you think she will survive after this. I mean, it looks as if she may well be not going to Sandringham and actually could have to find somewhere completely different to live after living in this slightly strange arrangement with her ex-husband, living in the same living quarters for 20 years at Royal Lodge and even longer elsewhere as well.
I've only ever heard nice things actually about Sarah. I've got mutual friends, strangely enough, and but I've never had any kind of contact with her directly, even when I worked there, because you've got to remember she was technically divorced, so she wasn't around. So I never actually got to meet her, but I've only ever heard kind of positive things. But and one part of me was quite happy, because over the years it became obvious that they were living together. As to what respect that is, I don't know. But they were living together. They're good friends. We know that. Who knows? Maybe. I mean, at one point I think it was in the cards. There was rumours that maybe they were officially back together. Which obviously maybe she probably liked. I mean, she adores him and she supports him, and I think that support has now been her downfall as well, because obviously she's supported him and now she's lost everything as well.
Two people who just don't seem to have particularly good judgment at all. Grant, fascinating to talk to you. Grant Harold there, author of The Royal Butler. Thank you for that, Grant. Tim is on the line from Hartlepool. Give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Tim, you're very welcome to the programme this evening. What would you like to say?
Yeah, so it's about Andrew. I mean, as far as I'm aware, he hasn't actually been convicted of anything.
That's correct. That's correct.
And so I'm a bit worried. It's a bit concerning. This feels a little bit like we're a trial by media, and where the masses are led into a frame of mind where a chap that hasn't actually been convicted of anything and is now being condemned as being entitled. I mean, you know, there's loads of people like that, but they're not stripped of any rights. So whilst obviously nobody would condone anybody that does anything that is illegal, and especially to do with underage and all of that, the point is he hasn't been convicted of anything.
But he's also not going to prison. He's not going to prison, Tim. It's not as if he's being thrown in prison without any form of charge. He's going to live a really nice life in Sandringham. He's going to be subsidised by his brother. He'll be fine. It's not as if he's under house arrest or anything like that. There's no criminal charges against him. But actually, what he has done, and what I would argue against you, Tim, is to say that the king is perfectly entitled to do what he wants as the monarch and head of the royal family. His brother has shown, at the very least, horrifically bad judgment about someone he knew was a paedophile, and then he continued to associate with him, continued to go to his home, continued to associate with him, and then lied about it. I mean, this is a scandal. It has been a scandal now for, you know, nearly 15 years, and particularly in the last 6 or 7 years, Tim. So it's not as if Andrew's life, yeah, he's going to be stripped of these titles, but the king's entitled to do that.
Yeah, sure. I'm not saying the king's not entitled to do it. What I'm saying is I feel that the media have played a huge part. Possibly, it worries me the way that whole societies can be gradually inclined to believe believe a certain way through, you know, constant media points.
But Tim, I'm going to argue against you again, because I believe that, you know, Andrew did an interview with Newsnight with Emily Maitlis. He was given ample opportunity to put his side across. At no point did he say, I feel sorry for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. I really hope that they're okay. I send them my very best wishes, and I will help the authorities on either side of the Atlantic with anything they need in regard to this. And on a number of occasions, Congress and law enforcement people have, and indeed people here in the UK, have asked him to answer further questions. We now know he lied in the Newsnight interview. I mean, he's not exactly his own best friend in this. He has not been transparent in all of this. He's the author of his own downfall, yeah. I would argue. I don't think it's the media's fault.
Well, my position on this is that I think it's the media that have driven him through, and public opinion, when he hasn't committed any crimes, to such a severe punishment. I mean, imagine the scenario where you've had your title of Prince removed over something you've not been convicted of, committed but as far as we know, no crimes against the law. So to remove that title, I just think, how have we got to the point where someone of the status of a prince can be shamed into letting go of it?
But it's not the status of a prince. He wasn't befitting the status of a prince. And if you've never met someone, he argues, his line the whole way through is that he never met Virginia Roberts-Giuffre. He said he never met her. Why then was she given a settlement of £12 million?
So I just come back to the same point. There's no crime here. No. He wasn't convicted of any crime.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, but also he hasn't. Tim, I agree with you. You're factually correct. He has not been convicted of a crime, but he's also not got a criminal sanction. There hasn't been a criminal sanction. He hasn't been put in prison. He hasn't had his liberty taken away from him.
Yeah, I agree. I think, though, to some extent, taking away a prince's title is tantamount to removing your liberty, really.
I respectfully disagree, Tim, but listen, thanks for your call. Appreciate you giving me a ring, and really appreciate that. And on my shows, as you know, we disagree without being disagreeable. Let's just remind ourselves of that BBC Newsnight interview. This was with Emily Maitlis, and this is the Andrew formerly known as Prince, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, on Newsnight in 2019.
We're staying at the house of a convicted sex offender.
It was a convenient place to stay. I've gone through this in my mind so many times. At the end of the day, with the benefit of all the hindsight that one can have, it was definitely the wrong thing to do. But at the time, I felt it was the honourable and right thing to do. And I admit fully that my judgment was probably coloured by my tendency to be too honourable, but that's just the way it is.
My tendency to be too honourable towards a paedophile. Dave is in Lincoln and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Dave, I understand you were a Grenadier Guard and you have some experience of Andrew. Tell us your thoughts on that.
Hi, Peter. I was a Grenadier Guardsman quite a number of years ago, 30-odd years ago. As a young Grenadier Guardsman, I was on the Tower London Guard. Ceremony of the Keys gets carried out.
I've been to the Ceremony of the Keys. It's brilliant. It's really good.
Yeah. So I was, that particular evening, I was on what we call a tactical sentry, where I wasn't getting into the red tunic and bearskin. I was in camouflage clothes, just in the shadows, sort of doing an overwatch.
Yeah.
And this particular evening, I was on that sentry duty, and Prince Andrew and 3 or 4 generals sort of were heading straight for me. This was slightly before the Ceremony of the Keys. And as he came towards me, I thought, oh, crikey, it's the Duke of York. So I stopped, saluted, stayed my name on my post. And I've got to say, Peter, he was the most arrogant, obnoxious person I think I've ever met in my entire life.
What did he do? What did he say, Dave?
It was just the way he spoke to me, the way his whole manner towards me. Bearing in mind, Peter, I've done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
You know, bearing in mind I was just carrying out my duty.
Yes.
He came over just really obnoxious, really sort of arrogant, and you know, I can remember a part of it. He actually dropped his handkerchief on the floor, and one of the generals said, "Guardsman, pick up the Duke of York's handkerchief." You know.
Oh goodness.
And obviously, I picked it up. I'm in the army. You do what you're told.
Sure.
You know? So I sort of picked it up, but I sort of look back on that time. It's so, you know, bizarre, really. How
well, it is bizarre. I mean, through an accident of biology, through birth, he was born into a role where he was treating you like something that was on a shoe. You were doing your job and being a reasonable, nice person, professional, and all the rest of it. And there's just no need for that.
Absolutely, and when I often think back about this encounter, I honestly think the same, Peter. You know, I'd done nothing wrong. I was carrying out my duty in a professional manner, and that's the way he treated me. He'd never met me before. He didn't really ask what I was up to. He just had this attitude and arrogance about him that I'd say I've never really encountered it since.
So how do you feel today? How do you feel today when you look back at that incident and see what has happened to the person who treated you so badly?
I'll be honest with you, Peter. You know, when the story started coming out about what he'd sort of been up to, it really didn't shock me at all. You know, as in regards to how he spoke to other members of the sort of the royal staff, if you like, you know, and his treatment of people, it just didn't shock me because that's exactly how he treated me. You know, so it was no shock to me. So you know, I think what's happened is the right outcome, really.
Dave, there's a great Chinese general in antiquity called Sun Tzu. Don't know if you ever come across Sun Tzu. He was a Chinese general, Chinese philosopher, and he wrote a book called The Art of War. It's a short book, and I'd highly recommend you read it, Dave. But my favourite book in The Art of War is when Sun Tzu says, "If you wait by the river long enough, the bodies of your enemies will come floating by."
Right, yeah.
Dave, thanks, mate. Appreciate the call. Thank you very much. Thank you to Bob in Cheltenham as well. He said, "I would like to respectfully disagree with your earlier caller, Tim. Andrew has embarrassed and undermined the royal family by showing appalling judgment at the very least. Frankly, he got off lightly." Great show, Peter, says Bob in Cheltenham. Well, thank you for that. Loads more to discuss. Dave in Dorset says, "If only the media and public opinion could get rid of this government." We'll talk in just a second about the government. We'll talk as well about Nigel Farage. He's comparable to Hitler, according to Zara Sultana, the MP who's teamed up with Jeremy Corbyn to form Your Party, or whatever it's called this week. Isabel Oakeshott, our international editor, will be with us in just a second to chew through all those stories, and I want your reaction to 0344 499 1000.
When we break the law, we wish we had a Prime Minister to constantly exonerate us. She's getting special treatment, and I don't think she deserves it.
There are so many people who just seem to, have casually done the wrong thing, and they just weren't aware that what they'd done was in fact the wrong thing, even though, in this case, she just happens to be the Chancellor of the Exchequer. These are the people that set the laws and ought to be aware of the laws of the country that govern the rest of us. As you say, the rest of us would not be permitted any kind of special treatment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, away from royal matters, Zara Sultana, who is the co-leader of your party with Jeremy Corbyn, she has been talking to BBC Radio 4, a podcast called Political Thinking, with Nick Robinson as one of their main presenters. And what she's managed to do is compared Nigel Farage to Adolf Hitler. Yes, really. This is what she said.
I do think he has all the features of a fascist politician, and I think it's important that we stop a fascist reform government.
Fascist?
When someone attacks trade union rights, when they are not supportive of minority communities, where they are trying to get us out of the ECHR so they can get away with anything and there is no state accountability, we can see what's happening across Europe, and that is a descent into fascism.
You're comparing Nigel Farage with Franco, with Mussolini, arguably with Adolf Hitler. Really?
I have legitimate concerns about what a Nigel Farage government would do to trade unionists, to working class communities, to minority communities, to LGBT people. And what I've seen in government is Nigel Farage and his colleagues, like I said, vote against trade union rights, vote against anything that would actually help our working class communities. So yes, he's a danger.
Yes, Nigel Farage, that well-known homophobe who made David Bull, an openly gay man, the chairman of his party, and one of his most prominent councillors, the openly gay man, Darren Grimes. Clearly, Nigel Farage absolutely hates gay people. Let's talk to Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor. Isabel, where to even start with this? I suppose I have to ask you, does she have a point? I mean, we both know the answer is no.
So I'll just say no in that case. I mean,
yes.
I genuinely can't believe anyone is still using these sorts of ridiculous comparisons. Every time someone uses the Hitler or fascism analogy, it just doesn't do them any favors. It just makes them look juvenile, really, doesn't it? And it seems this is a very interesting new definition of fascism, whereby if you're anti-trade union, that means you must be a fascist. I don't know. I studied history. I've never heard that definition of fascism before.
Yes, it's a very strange definition of fascism. A probably more reasonable definition of fascism, and people who do what fascists do in terms of crushing the opposition, in terms of having no dissent, in terms of ruling people with an iron fist. I would argue Hamas are fascists, actually, and I wonder if Zara Sultana would use the same comparison about Hamas.
Well, I just think this sort of terminology is just really unhelpful, isn't it? I mean, it's meaningless in a way, but what it tells you is just how frightened the hard left is about the possible, the prospect, and increasingly likely, I would say, prospect of a reform government. And they are reaching again and again for this sort of fascist stroke racist type terminology. And I just don't think it works. I mean, it certainly works amongst their own kind of vote. But I don't think that anyone now is really, anyone in the middle, let's talk about floating voters. Do they really think, having seen as much as they now of Nigel Farage that he's a fascist? Really? I don't think so.
Although, interestingly, if you look at some of the polling, it says that your party, or whatever the name eventually is, could take about 10% of the vote. So arguably they're more of a threat to Keir Starmer than they are to Nigel Farage.
Well, that's right. And in fact, the prospect of your party, such a weird name, isn't it? Every time it's sort of unsettling just to say it. I feel like I'm saying it's your party, Peter.
It's not mine. It's not mine.
Anything that splits the left is going to be a good thing for parties on the centre right. And you know what we're looking at, and you and I have talked about this before, is a sort of whole recalibration of British politics, where you've got multiple parties, all of whom are in with a shout at the next election, and we can't tell at this stage how that plays out. Does it end up being, when we finally reach this election that everyone seems to want kind of yesterday, does it end up being tactical voting on both sides? You know, tactical voting on the left and tactical voting on the right, and what does that look like?
Yeah, well, exactly. Let me ask you about one more story. This is about 3 Just Stop Oil activists who sprayed Stonehenge with orange powder. They've been cleared of criminal damage. Let's just have a look at some of this footage of them actually doing this. This is Rajan Naidu, who's 74, Oxford University student Neve Lynch, who's 23, and Luke Watson, who is 36, were involved in a protest the day before last year's summer solstice. Mr. Naidu and Ms. Lynch had been accused of using 2 colour blasters filled with corn flour, talc and an orange dye to spray the World Heritage Site. And Mr. Watson had bought the equipment using the attack and had driven his co-accused to Stonehenge that morning. They accepted taking part in the protest, citing in their defence the reasonable excuse and their rights under Articles 10 and 11 of, guess what, the European Convention on Human Rights, to freedom of speech and freedom to protest. They were cleared by a jury of criminal damage. Isabel, your thoughts on this?
Well, my thoughts are that I'm very relieved that we've had so much less of this lately.
Yes.
And we have the reason we started having a lot less of it, I suppose, is twofold, but primarily because judges did actually start jailing some of these absolute morons and criminals, because that's what they are when they do things like that.
Although the jury doesn't agree with us, I'm afraid.
Well, evidently in this case, we can't call them criminals.
Yeah.
That might actually be libelous. So just to be clear, they have been found not guilty.
They're as pure as the driven snow.
But you know, let's say in the court of public opinion, that looks pretty criminal what they're doing there. Whether or not a judge and jury agrees is another matter. So this sort of activity, direct action, began to tail off once people did start being jailed. And you'll remember that Just Stop Oil said they were moving on to other strategies, I think. And we're all very relieved about it. And I'm glad that we don't have to put up with this stuff anymore. But it's awful to see that being done to Stonehenge. And I mean, I didn't follow the case in detail, but I assume that the material that they used proved quite easy to strip off, fortunately, mercifully, to clean. But nonetheless, any cleaning of those monuments is a bad thing. You know, these are ancient and delicate, and you just don't want to be having to do that.
Isabel, as always, thank you. That's Isabel Oakeshott there. Actually, maybe just before you go, Isabel, I'll ask you very briefly just about Rachel Reeves and your thoughts on Rachel Reeves and the fact that she seems to be largely exonerated in the last 24 hours from when we spoke yesterday. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so thanks for picking up on that. So I'm not certain this story is over. It's not a story I love, because I kind of think that, you know, she has made an administrative error. That on the face of it, that's how it seemed to me, and I just couldn't quite get a sweat up over it. But now I've looked into it a bit more, I am a bit more exercised about it, and I do think that there is more to come on this story. I am picking up that there may be more evidence that she should have known better. Now, I won't go further than that now. Maybe by Monday there'll be more to say on this, but I think that she's not entirely out of the woods yet, and I wonder what the weekend papers will find.
Interesting stuff. Isabel, thank you. We'll take a look and no doubt we'll talk further on this. Thank you, Isabel Oakeshott, our international editor here at Talk. Lots more to discuss on that. And indeed immigration, 75 migrants deported to France and just 51 allowed onto the UK under the one-in, one-out deal. But of course it is a drop in the ocean in comparison to how many are coming across illegally as well. Also more foreign prisoners clogging up our jails, the population rising there. Lots more to discuss here on Talk. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch, including Chris, the old school lefty in Brighton, as he calls himself, speaking as a lefty of the old school. There we are. I'm embarrassed to hear the nonsense coming out of what passes for modern so-called lefties. Farage may be lots of things. I loathe him and the Tories, but speaking common sense about illegal migration does not make you a fascist. Also, saying so is ridiculous. If you ask me, politicians on all sides have gone bonkers in recent years. I prefer the 70s and 80s. At least people like myself knew where we were. Well, Chris, that's a really interesting point, especially on migration, and we're going to talk about that now with Henry Bolton, the international border control expert. He is also the SDP's spokesman on foreign affairs, defence and security. Another reference to the SDP, of course, there in the 80s. 75 migrants deported to France, 51 allowed in to the UK under the deal. These are very small numbers, Henry, and we know that at least one of them has come back on a small dinghy despite being deported. We also know from reporting by Channel 4 News that there are people who've been deported under this scheme, gone to detention centres, and they're just coming back. Or alternatively planning to come back. There's so much more to talk about as well, including the foreign-born prison population. But just give me your reaction to the numbers, Henry, we have under the one-in, one-out scheme. Do you feel it's working?
Totally insignificant, Peter. Utterly insignificant. So even if we got none in return, those 75 that have been returned to France, that's one in 153 that are going back. So, it's no deterrent whatsoever. I have said right from the beginning that there was talk about this scheme, before it was agreed even, that it was nothing but appeasement of British public opinion and the British media to sort of look as though we're doing something. The immigration enforcement sort of teams that are responsible for all of this, for the escorting, the removals itself, the returns casework and so on, totals, there are no public figures, but around about 1,800 people, which is nothing in terms of the resourcing the government's putting into this either. So, there's no real effort from the government here to have any impact, and there is no deterrent.
Yes, certainly. And there are so many people who really do think this isn't a deterrent at all. Many people agree with you. And also the fact that there isn't just a huge level of public outcry about this. I just wonder what you think as well about the foreign-born prison population rising 14 times faster than the British population. There's a number of foreign-born offenders in prison. The number of foreign nationals being held in jails in England and Wales rose by 3.1% from 10,418 in September 2024 to 10,737 a year later. Those are Ministry of Justice figures. 15 times the rate of increase for the number of British people in jail. Such a debate as well, Henry, about whether those people should be deported immediately, partially through their sentence, or at the end of their sentence. What do you think of all that?
I think there are some cases in which it may be more practical to incarcerate them here in the UK until such time as they can be deported. But in most cases, I think they should be deported immediately. And they shouldn't necessarily go to a prison. They should go to a secure detention centre pending removal. But there's another point to this. We shouldn't even be getting to that stage. Now, I know people who are passionately opposed to the mass rate of immigration that we've got, both legal and illegal, but still don't actually grasp the impact of the cultural differences between the United Kingdom and social behavioural norms, if you like, between the United Kingdom and many of these other countries that people are coming from. I've had the, I would say, privilege to have worked and lived in many of these countries. And one of the reasons that they are unstable and that there is violence in some of these countries and that their economy is shot or virtually non-existent, and so for all sorts of reasons people want to come here, is because their societies quite simply have not developed the institutions of the rule of law, justice, freedom of the media, and so on, because their society simply works on different social and behavioural norms. And what we are doing is we're allowing people to come here, assuming that they think in the same way that we do. They fundamentally don't. Now, that's not a criticism, but when you bring people in who to whom misogyny, beating wives and children, incest,
and we've seen this on numerous occasions, haven't we, Henry? We've seen where these excuses. In fact, just the other day, there was an asylum seeker who was convicted. He was doing a Deliveroo or Uber Eats. I'm not sure which. I can't quite remember which firm it was, but he was doing delivery he shouldn't have been doing, and he sexually assaulted 2 women. And he said that in Afghanistan, where he's from, this type of greeting or goodbye is a cultural thing. Now, I don't think it is. I think that's nonsense. But this was given as an excuse.
Look, I spent 27 months in Helmand. I also visited Kabul many times ever since we went into Afghanistan. As an example, in Afghanistan, sex for men with underage children, underage boys, is not just occasional, it's not just normal, it is ubiquitous.
Yeah.
And the treatment of women is abhorrent. I understand that, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not entirely clear on this, I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I understand Sadiq Khan has been suggesting that we have women-only spaces and coaches on the tube. Well, you know, there may be some justification from safety point of view, but this is the sort of segregation.
Yeah, well, we shouldn't have to change our society for those reasons, and it should never be acceptable for that to happen. Henry, thank you. Henry Bolton is an International Border Control expert, STP spokesman for Foreign Affairs, Defence and Security. Thank you to Margaret in Birmingham, who says, I think it's time people stop this name-calling of Nigel Farage. Heseltine yesterday, now Zara Sultana. Nigel should stop it in his tracks. It's dangerous talk, says Margaret in Birmingham. And Stephen in Bristol says, good afternoon, Peter. Good afternoon, Stephen. If that Sultana woman was taught about real history whilst at school, she would know for sure that Nigel Farage is nothing like Hitler. Where on earth does she get off? Well, my worry is it's 4 stops before Dagenham. Stay with us here on Talk.
For the Earl of Inverness and then Duke of York, that still requires an Act of Parliament. The Parliament has said they don't want to deal with it. It's up to the King to make moves on that in terms of giving Parliament the nod to do it. But the King doesn't want to waste valuable parliamentary time.
It'll take 10 minutes, Rafe. Well, it will take 10 minutes.
Anyway.
Do it, Charlie. Do it.
It's up to Parliament to actually go through with all of that.
Yeah,
so.
but I mean, I suppose I'm probably pushing it now. I mean, his disgrace could not be greater, could it?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, let's talk now about Rachel Reeves. She's apparently entitled to feel grumpy with her estate agent. That's what one minister says earlier. The Trade Minister, Chris Bryant, spoke to Times Radio about Rachel Reeves.
Are you deliberately seeking to hide some fact? And secondly, is the fact that you're seeking to hide materially beneficial to you, that it shouldn't be in the public domain? The difference between her first letter to the Prime Minister and the second has not materially benefited her. If anything, to the contrary. It's so important that we have a fair system. You can't just judge every single politician by the front page of a newspaper.
Dr. Sam Power is a political corruption expert and a politics lecturer at the University of Bristol. Sam, great to talk to you again. How are you doing?
Yes, good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Sam knows, certainly when he goes to sleep, where power lies. Sam, tell me about this. Has Rachel Reeves done anything wrong? Is she entitled to feel grumpy with her estate agent? What about the Prime Minister's political judgment in putting out a letter saying she'd done nothing wrong without knowing all the facts?
I think, I probably wouldn't go as far as saying that she's entitled to feel grumpy. I suspect, she's entitled to feel like it's a bit of the cut and thrust of politics. I think in the scale of sort of, let's call them political scandals, this is one that's sort of going to be slightly, I suspect, here today, gone tomorrow, or certainly not gone into next week. Probably slightly, frankly, has the former Prince Andrew to thank for that, and taking a lot of that off the front pages this morning, at least. In terms of the offence, as it were, it does seem like this is when we think about corruption very, very broadly. Corruption is the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. I think when we just use that fairly simple metric, what we're seeing here is perhaps incompetence, perhaps something that should have been checked up. But we always need to be a bit careful not to equate incompetence with sort of rank corruption, especially in political life.
Yeah, it's interesting because she doesn't seem to have materially gained from this, apart from obviously the £954 that wasn't charged. And actually, her husband seems to have dealt with it. It just seems to be all a bit confused. I mean, from my perspective as someone who used to deal with political communications as a former special advisor, the point is with these things, you establish all the facts and then you put everything in the public domain that you possibly can. I'm not interested in, Rachel Reeves' husband's email address. That's not something I should know, but I should know as a taxpayer and as a member of the public whether she's done something wrong or not. Do you feel sorry for her at all, Sam?
I suppose I certainly feel sorry for politicians when they're kind of caught up in things where it does seem genuinely, I suppose in this instance, like an error or an oversight. What I would say, though, about politicians more broadly, and perhaps even a bit of free advice to the Labour Party, and Rishi Sunak might give this advice as well, is that if you sort of pin ethics to your political leadership, if you pin a new era of integrity, then what you really do need to do is be squeaky clean and not make let's call them silly mistakes. And what you can do is actually a pretty significant audit of what are your main policies that you're going to introduce. The Renters' Rights Bill was going to be one one of them. What are journalists going to be looking at? Well, they're probably going to be looking at housing arrangements quite a lot. So at the very least, cabinet members, if you are moving out of one house and moving into Downing Street, number 11, perhaps it's important to think about, especially if you're putting new legislation into renters, what your rental arrangements are. So I think I feel sorry for them, but it is sort of the detail.
Well, it is. And it's also the broader point, Sam, that when you have the Chancellor who can't keep track of her household finances, or has subcontracted that to her husband who can't keep track of the household finances. If I knew I was going to be charged £954 for something, and I'm sure you're paid so much at the University of Bristol that sum would mean nothing to you. It'd be a mere trifle, Sam, because so many academics are famously overpaid. That you might not notice it, but with me, if someone said I'm going to charge you 954 quid, then didn't, I would say, well, hold on a second, is this sort of properly done really in all of this? And I do wonder about that. And the point you make about this little audit, I mean, surely when you've lost the Deputy Prime Minister because of stamp duty, surely the propriety and ethics people say, well, actually, what you other ministers might want to do is just take a quick look at all your property stuff and make sure that you're not in the same situation.
Well, first of all, I'd love you to introduce me to these academics.
They're called Vice Chancellors, Sam.
Because I'd like to have a word with them and see where I'm going wrong. But also, I think you're quite right to an extent in that there are areas where you just need to tighten up. So about this time last year, what have you been getting in terms of donations in kind? This is going to be on the front pages of the newspaper, and perhaps you need to get a lid on it. As soon as the Angela Rayner stuff happened, then the Russian RLE stuff happened, people are going to be looking at housing. So whether you go through your cabinet and you say who has rental agreements in place, and have you checked everything is order? Have you talked to the ethics advisor about this? It just feels like a kind of due diligence that should happen, especially if ethics and integrity is at the heart of your government.
And Sam, I wonder, just with ethics and integrity, how much in your academic work have you looked at the perception of corruption versus actual corruption? Because there must be people who are accused of things. I mean, I strongly disagreed with him, but we had someone on earlier who said, well, hold on a second, Prince Andrew hasn't been convicted of anything, yet we're treating him like a criminal. Now, I would argue he's shown catastrophic errors of judgment, but when you look at politicians, some of them resign because of the perception of things rather than because of things they've actually done. That can happen, can't it?
Yeah, and absolutely. And the thing with corruption is it's actually quite often the perception of corruption that we're dealing with, because, if you're trying to measure corruption, for example, you can't really go up and ask someone, have you behaved corruptly? Are you corrupt? Because they tend to say, well, no. So you quite often have to deal with perceptions, and corruption is about an abuse, and it's actually quite often about a perceived abuse of power, right? So actually, more often than not, you do have to deal with whether something smells right, the sniff test, and it makes it quite hard because actually in different societies, in different countries, we actually do have different understandings of what is and isn't acceptable in society. It's where the Conservatives got all caught up in Partygate, because they're saying, well, we haven't actually really broken any rules, and maybe it was a rule here, maybe it was a rule there, maybe those tiny things, but no one's going to jail. And very rarely do the public care if someone has really broken the law. What they care about is that people are behaving fairly and as we expect them to behave, particularly in public life. So perceptions are in many ways key.
Yes. Sam, as always, thank you, Dr. Sam Parr. A man who knows that power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. No suggestion, obviously, that Sam is in any way corrupt. He's not. He's as pure as the driven snow and a very, very good political expert, and great to have him back on the programme. The only ones behaving like fascists are Labour, says Sue VS. Leslie says, will Mr. Windsor now have to arrange his teddy bears on his bed himself now? Really, the struggle is real. Lots of other people getting in touch with Zara Sultana. Richard says she never got the memo calling people a Nazi and fascist doesn't work anymore. And Nick says, so Zara Sultana is happy to call Farage a fascist and Hitler, yet she takes offence at being called a member of the Fruit and Nut Party. The woman is off her trolley. Well, Nick, actually, it's worse than that. She said that to talk about her surname, Sultana, and say, you know, it's the fruit and nut party, or alternatively that it's a fruit. That's racist, apparently, according to Zara Sultana. Yes, really. We're going to talk more about Prince Andrew. Ed Owens is coming up. Dr. Ed Owens, a royal commentator and historian. Loads to discuss. Get your call in 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it's just gone 5 o'clock. Thank you so much for your company here on Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. I'm here today and indeed all next week on Drive and over the weekend as well, between 10 and 1 tomorrow and on Sunday. Lots to discuss. We'll talk about Prince Andrew, about the former Prince Andrew now. We'll talk about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and he's been removed from the role of the peerage after losing the Prince title. He has been refused to remove from the line of succession, and also there are many calls to change the Prince Andrew place names and street signs right across the country, including in Northern Ireland. We'll talk about that. Dr. Ed Owens is coming up in just a second. We'll talk this hour as well about foreign prisoners, about Just Stop Oil activists who sprayed Stonehenge with orange powder cleared following a jury trial. Fireworks controls for animals. It is, of course, Halloween tonight, and there are lots of fireworks over the next few days. We'll talk to Dominic Dyer about that, the animal welfare campaigner. I have a cat, as you may know, Jack, the legend that he is, and he's very scared of fireworks, and we'll talk about that and how to keep your animals safe. We'll also talk about the sport with Sean Custis and take all your calls. They're coming into the building on all sorts of issues, including Zara Sultana, the leader of your party, who has called Nigel Farage a fascist just like Hitler. We will talk more about that. We'll make sure we get your calls on the air between now and 7. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note, you can send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Let's get started here on Talk Drive. Well, there's been so much reaction to that announcement by Buckingham Palace that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor is the new name of Prince Andrew because he's been stripped of all his titles. He's going to be removed from Royal Lodge. We hear that in the new year he is going to move to Sandringham, the private estate owned by the royal family. That's not owned by the taxpayer but by the royal family. Lots to discuss with Dr. Ed Owens in just a second. But earlier, the Trade Minister, Chris Bryant, spoke to the BBC about the King's decision. This is what he said.
I warmly support what the King is doing today. I think that the vast majority of people in this country will think that it's the right thing to do. You know, when you think of what Virginia Giuffre and other victims went through in the whole situation with Jeffrey Epstein, I think everybody will come to the conclusion that the King's doing the right thing, and we stand ready to support whatever the King thinks is necessary for us to do in this regard.
Well, there are many people getting in touch about this, including Graham, who says maybe Andrew should go to the Royal Lodge, from Royal Lodge to the Royal Lodger, and bunk in with Harry and Meghan in Montecito in one of their many bedrooms. Andrew remains a prince. His born bloodline, says S. People may stop using it, but he'll still technically be a prince by blood. We'll talk about all that actually with Daniel Britton, the political, constitutional and royal historian, a little bit later on. He'll give us all the detail on that. Once a royal, always a royal, irrespective of what is done. They can't remove that. Remove him from the royal family. They can only distance themselves, which will be the right thing to do at this stage, says that person. And Kim says, Kim lives in Spain. My question is how Charles kicked him out when all he has done is moved into another one of his mansions and still paying no rent. Well, Kim, I suppose the point, and maybe Ed Owens will correct me here, but Dr. Ed Owens, the royal commentator and historian, joins me. Ed, great to have you on the programme. I think the point... Thanks, Peter. I think the point probably is that he's being removed from the royal estate, essentially, that is owned and funded by the Crown Estate, the taxpayer, and he's being moved to Sandringham, which is a private estate owned by the family. Is that essentially it, Ed? Am I right in that?
Yeah, that's essentially it. The Crown Estate belongs to the British public, in essence. It's called the Crown Estate. It sounds like it belongs to the monarchy, but no, it's, in essence, public property. And it's getting him out of public property and into a private accommodation that has meant so much, I think, to many members of the public over the last couple of weeks.
How big a shock was this decision? It didn't seem that really anybody predicted that such a dramatic decision at this particular point would happen, and I wonder whether the King, I should say. Sorry, I keep forgetting he's the King. King Charles, of course. The King Charles just thought, actually, hold on a second. I'm going to do what I want, when I want, on my own terms. Some people saying that the heckling the other day might have been something to do to influence it. I just wonder what your take on all of that is.
Well, it's certainly a historic moment. How much of a shock it was is debatable. I would say, you know, some of us historians, other people that commentate on the monarchy, the royal family, we've been talking about this on television, on radio for coming up to 2 weeks, partly because it was proven that Andrew was factually incorrect when he told Emily Maitlis in his now infamous 2019 Newsnight interview that he had disassociated himself from Epstein, when in fact the reality was that he'd maintained that friendship, and that was the key turning point when it was clear the royal household were no longer going to defend him either, and that they were not going to push back on public and political pressure to see his status changed. To what extent that status would change, that is what's been transformed in the last 24, 48 hours, is that we've gone from him having all other royal titles apart from his princedom taken away to the princedom, that princely title being taken away as well. And that is pretty revolutionary. Nothing like this has happened, certainly since 1917, when King George V, then the King of Great Britain and Ireland, he deliberately separated himself from a number of members of his family who were also members of the German royal family, and he did so by removing their British royal titles. But we haven't seen anything like this since 1917, and arguably I would say this is easily the biggest royal crisis moment that we've seen since the death of Diana in 1997.
how does it actually work? How does he manage to do that from Charles's perspective? Because there was, of course, this idea by the Liberal Democrats about a week ago where they said there should be parliamentary time used to debate this. What is the actual mechanism? Talk us through the nuts and bolts of that in as much as you understand it.
Well, we are going to find out more as to the exact constitutional mechanism that's going to be used. In the past, different strategies have been used. I gave you the previous example of what happened in 1917. And in that instance, a committee was set up that came from the Privy Council, and they made recommendations to Parliament regarding which members of the British royal family, also members of the German royal family, should have their British titles taken away from them. Now, that hasn't happened in this instance. Rather, the impetus for change, the impetus for the withdrawal of Andrew's titles has come, as we know thus far, directly from the King. And it could be that he issues letters patent of some kind. It could be some other kind of constitutional mechanism that is used to rid Andrew of his titles. We know that he was also he had his peerage taken away, and that it was David Lammy responsible for that.
Yeah, the Lord Chancellor. Yeah.
Yeah, as Lord Chancellor, and that was a constitutional role that fell to him. But we are yet to find out exactly the constitutional mechanism that's going to be used. But what is clear is that he will no longer be styled as Prince.
Tell me about the thought that we have. I mean, it's very interesting in this particular point about the other members of his family. Now, you could argue that Sarah Ferguson is not a member of his family anymore because they're divorced, but they're clearly very close. They live in the same home, 20, 30 years after they've actually been divorced. She cares for him a lot. He cares for her. What happens to her, and what happens to Beatrice and Eugenie? Because they're still to be known as princesses, aren't they?
Well, the problem for Sarah Ferguson is that she is also implicated in the Epstein scandal. It's also become apparent in the last month that she maintained good relations and contact with Jeffrey Epstein long after Andrew had claimed that he had officially distanced himself from the sex offender. That is the problem for both Sarah Ferguson and Andrew. She's not going to probably accompany him to Sandringham. We have heard about that today. Rather, she is probably going to install herself in private accommodation of her own. The question is, how does she continue to fund the lavish lifestyle that she's enjoyed until now? Because there are a lot of questions that still hang over both her and Andrew regarding how they paid for their very privileged existence. So. Difficult to say exactly what she's going to do at this stage. In terms of Beatrice and Eugenie, if they want to have public careers ahead of them, and I think William and Charles would both like that they are a wider part of the royal family, and one day might become sort of active working members of the group as well. I think they've just got to distance themselves from their parents. That unfortunately for them both, they've been too ready in the past to stand by their parents. And we know that Andrew and Sarah, to put it in two words, are royal rotters. They've really managed to upset the apple cart in the past. And Beatrice and Eugenie, if they want to ensure their own future as members of this family, they've got to seek distance from their parents.
And that, of course, can be a difficult thing to do because most of us, not everybody, but most of us love their parents. Should Andrew just essentially do nothing now? Should he just stay there and do nothing? Is there anything he can do to attempt to redeem himself in some way? Should he cooperate? Well, I think he should cooperate, certainly with anybody who's asking him for any information and on Epstein and those victims who may require information from him. Because he's often said, I've made myself available, but it's never quite worked out in regard to the authorities, especially in America, both law enforcement and congressional authorities. Is there anything he can do to say, actually, I'm now going to attempt anyway to at least help those authorities to redeem himself even one iota?
I agree with you, Peter, and I think that would be the quickest route to some form of redemption, would be to cooperate with the police, and that's both the British police and the US authorities, communicating with them, making clear to them what he witnessed whilst in the company of Epstein, because he will have inside knowledge on how that man worked, what went on behind closed doors. Better he share that, and you know that we hear that also from the family of Virginia Giuffre. They want greater openness from Prince Andrew. It's clear that they consider that that the allegations are true against him, but that nevertheless he will, in trying to defend his name, which he's never done publicly. He didn't go. There was no trial. There was no court time towards this investigation. He could, that would be a swift route to some form of public redemption. Let's look at other sort of figures in the past. John Profumo, caught up in the Profumo scandal of '63. The way that he did it was he committed his life to sort of to a modest and quiet life of charity and philanthropy. That's another way to do it, but not seeking the limelight. That's been the problem with Andrew. He's been too ready to seek the limelight in the past.
Thank you, Ed. That's Dr. Ed Owens, royal commentator and historian. And according to the YouGov polling institution, the polling firm, 79% of British people believe the King has made the right decision. That's something certainly one of our texters would agree with. Hi Peter, we should get rid of all the royal family. Ali says unless Andrew loses all his staff and fends for himself, then it's no punishment at all. Rachel's in Hertfordshire and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Rachel, your thoughts on this? You're very welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Peter. It's nice to talk to you for the first time.
You too, Rachel.
My view on this is that, yes, he's committed a crime in the sense that he's lied. And he's an idiot.
And that's not a crime to lie, though, is it?
No, but he's an idiot. And he's self-entitled. And he's paid a price. However, no Americans have paid a price. If you think about it, he's a low-hanging fruit. He's easy, gives a max to what is in jail. There's a whole bunch of Americans who are involved in this. Why aren't they on trial?
Ghislaine Maxwell, of course, is in prison at the moment. She's British and she has paid a price for it. There are others as well who will be investigated, and we know that Congress is looking into some of the others who may be implicated in this. But do you think Andrew's been made a scapegoat?
Yes and no. No, because he should be responsible for his behaviour, and he was self-entitled, and I certainly agree that he should lose his thing. He behaved appropriately for his mother, and now King Charles has done the completion of that. Mm-hmm. But no, I don't think he should go to America. I think the Americans have now got to step up and start prosecuting those who are involved with Epstein.
Yeah.
Until they do that, I don't think Prince Andrew should do anything. I'm sorry.
But perhaps he could give information that would help lead to other perpetrators of these alleged crimes. Rachel, surely he should help the authorities.
I think he should where he can. Absolutely. I don't have a problem with that. But I see him. The trouble is the royal family has two roles. One is a personal one, one is a professional one. And he confused the two and chose to use his personal one to support somebody who turns out to be completely disreputable as a friend.
Yeah.
And that is a very fine line, and his judgment is screwed on that one. I'm sorry, but I feel that that's the case.
Rachel, thank you. Great to talk to you. Give me a ring anytime. Very interesting to chat to you. Just some more of these statistics, these polling statistics now about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. This is YouGov, the polling firm, saying the public overwhelmingly backed the King's decision to strip Andrew of his prince title. 79% of British people saying it's the right call, but 58% of Britons feel the royal family have moved too slowly in dealing with the controversy. 21% about the right speed. Most of the public, 53%, now feel the King has realistically done all he can to separate the royal family from Andrew, although 28% believe the King could do more to distance the crown from the controversial former prince. Conservative voters are most likely to believe the King has done enough. 76% of them, compared to 62% of Lib Dems, 58% of Reform UK voters, and 53% of Labour voters. Well, what do you think? Does the King done the right thing? Has he done enough? Is there any more he can do? I think there's plenty more Andrew can do, but I'm not sure there's so much more the King can do. Tell us your thoughts on all of this. 0344 499 1000. There's plenty of people getting in touch, not least about Stonehenge. We're going to talk about that in a second, and these Just Stop Oil people who have been found not guilty by a jury. Good evening, Peter, says Paul. Beggars believe that the vandals of Stonehenge have been let off under the ECHR. That is not justice. It's another example of Starmer's road to dystopian Britain. And Penny says, how can anyone be called racist if what they say is fact? Leslie says, if Lammy had been held to account for his remarks about Farage being a Hitler Youth member and Brexiteers worse than Nazis, perhaps Sultana would have thought twice about making her remarks. That is Zara Sultana, the co-leader of your party, alongside Jeremy Corbyn, who believes that Nigel Farage is a fascist like Hitler. Lots to discuss. Want to get your thoughts on the air. 0344 499 1000. Peter Blexley is next. We'll talk to him about foreign prisoners and indeed Just Stop Oil as well.
For the Earl of Inverness and then Duke of York, that still requires an Act of Parliament. The Parliament has said they don't want to deal with it. It's up to the King to make moves on that in terms of giving Parliament the nod to do it. But the King doesn't want to waste valuable parliamentary time.
It'll take 10 minutes, Rafe. Well, it will take 10 minutes.
Anyway.
Do it, Charlie. Do it.
It's up to Parliament to actually go through with all of that.
Yeah,
so.
but I mean, I suppose I'm probably pushing it now. I mean, his disgrace could not be greater, could it?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, lots to discuss, especially in regard to Just Stop Oil. Their activists who sprayed Stonehenge with orange powder have been cleared following a trial. Let's just have a look at what they did. I will describe it for people who are listening on the radio, but if you're watching on your screen, you'll be able to see. These Just Stop Oil activists went to Stonehenge, of course one of the most ancient monuments on British soil, with orange powder and a sort of propellant as well, and there was talc, there were all sorts of things in it. They put it on Stonehenge the day before the solstice. They put it on their Twitter as well, and spread this on Stonehenge with a sort of fire extinguisher-esque thing, and then various people sort of tried to stop them doing it, causing damage certainly to the ancient Stonehenge tablets, but a jury has found them not guilty. They cited their right to freedom and right to protest, or the freedom to protest, certainly, and to make a political point. Peter Blexley is with me now, our crime commentator, former Metropolitan Police detective. Watching that footage, Peter, I would imagine there are many people who are at least questioning why a jury came to this conclusion.
Yes, of course, and I understand why people may be scratching their heads. The fact that these people were acquitted by a jury today doesn't alter the fact that their actions were stupid, idiotic and brainless. Their actions will always remain that, in my opinion. But sometimes juries return verdicts that are puzzling and sometimes perverse. That's the way it is. If I were to fall foul of the law, I would still prefer to be tried by 12 men and women who were my peers, rather than, say, 1, 2 or 3 judges sitting as representatives of the establishment. These things happen, as any experienced and pragmatic detective will tell you.
Of course. Let's talk about foreign prisoners clogging up our jails. The population of them is rising. It's rising at an exponential rate. And there's another story about 120 prisoners a day released from custody early. Tell us about what's going on there, because we know, of course, under the last government there was 99% capacity in prisons, and that was a major item of concern. The new government, well, newish government in the last 16 months, has had to release many, many people.
Well, they didn't have to release them. They chose to release them, using the argument that you've just put forward as their reasoning for that. And, of course, each and every time they do that, they make the streets of Britain just a little less safe, as happens every time another boatload of migrants, who we don't know who they are, washes up on the course, on the beaches of the UK. This is part of the ongoing criminal justice system crisis, which is absolutely in crisis. From the front line, the police, through the CPS, underfunded, underfunctioning, through the courts, crumbling, leaking roofs, not enough judges sitting, then to the prisons, then to the probation office. And the probation service, rather, is very, very much in focus as a result of these early release of 129 prisoners per day. The probation service is only effectively monitoring about a quarter of its cases. And that's very important, because what it means is certain people are not being seen regularly enough. They're not being checked enough. We don't know what they're up to. And of course, this in turn, bit by bit, makes us less safe.
Peter, you may know that I've been saying every day for the last few days the disgrace that it is that no one has been arrested after Pascal Robinson-Foster from Bob Villan at Glastonbury shouted "death, death" to the IDF. It's now been 125 days with no arrest. You can see a picture, if you're watching on the screen, of Pascal Robinson-Foster on there, who I believe should be arrested or at least cautioned, and then a file sent to the CPS. The Chief Constable Sarah Crew, you can also see, even in Somerset Police, you can also see on that screen, has said that she doesn't, through her press office, that she doesn't want to be interviewed about this. There's a sort of standing bid, essentially, with that press office. I'll speak to her on any programme that I do at any time, should she wish to discuss this case. She says she's not going to do that, and that's going to be the answer for the foreseeable future. I had a very pleasant, actually, exchange with her, one of her senior press officers yesterday on that, but the fact is she won't talk about it. We haven't got any arrests yet. We did have a statement yesterday saying the CPS has given, the Crown Prosecution Service has given some advice on this, but Peter, this is in great contrast, I think, to many, many cases. 125 days. He said it on live television, for goodness sake, and to our knowledge, anyway, no arrests have been made in this case. What do you make of this, Peter?
I would very much like to see what the CPS advice to the police was, what it said exactly, because if it did suggest that there are grounds for an arrest, then that arrest should be made as a matter of urgency.
They say they're considering that advice, but it was received last week, so they've had it for at least a week. Is that an understandable delay? Should we understand that, or should they just be going quickly? CPS says there's grounds to arrest. If that is in fact what they've said, therefore go and arrest.
OK, picture the scene. I've received that letter. I'm serving in Avon and Somerset Police. Just picture the scene. Of course, I'm not. I open the letter. I read it, probably an email. How long is that going to take me? Three, maybe 5 minutes. Tell you what, let's make it 10 minutes while I have a reread, just so that I'm completely across all of the minutiae within that letter. I then pick up the phone and instruct police officers to go and make an arrest. How long would that take? Possibly half an hour to read, issue the instructions and send officers on their way. Yet again, another example, I'm afraid, of the lamentable state of British policing circa 2025.
Many, many people feel two-tier justice in some of these cases as well. I would urge Sarah Crew, even if she won't speak to me, and I'd love her to at some stage, and that invitation will remain open. I would love Chief Constable Sarah Crew to pick up the phone, to read that advice, to act on that advice, if in fact that is what it says, because I believe there is a very, very strong case for Paschal Robinson Foster to at least be interviewed, if not cautioned, if not arrested, if not charged with incitement. So Chief Constable Sarah Crew, you know our stance on it. We're going to keep talking about it every single day until there is an arrest in this case. It's been 125 days. If it's 126 tomorrow, if it's 127 tomorrow, the day after that, and all of next week when I'm on drive, we're going to mention it every single day because we want justice done in this case. For the meantime, Peter Blexley, our crime commentator and former Metropolitan Police detective, thank you very much for your thoughts. Appreciate you joining us today. Lots of people getting in touch about Andrew, about Zara Sultana, lots of things. Chris says, afternoon Peter, afternoon Chris, if Zara Sultana is equating Farage to Hitler, fascism being far right, does that mean I can compare her to Corbyn, compare her and Corbyn to Stalin, as their far left ideology must sit firmly into communism? Maybe she'd be happy with that comparison. We don't know. Pete says, I've solved the Andrew accommodation problem. There's a nice house in Dulwich in South London up for rent. Now it's fully licensed. Pete, you win text of the day, and it's only halfway through the programme. Lots to discuss, including a very serious issue of tonight being Halloween trick-or-treating. Of course, everybody needs to keep safe, and their pets need to stay safe as well. I know fireworks are going off in my area. Jack the cat, not happy. Lots of people have animals. How do we keep them safe? And what should the government do about fireworks as well? Dominic Dyer is the animal welfare campaigner and chair of Nature 2030. I'm going to be talking to him in just a second here on Talk Drive. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Fascinating message from Mary in County Down, who sent this through. A former soldier I know said he'd been on guard duty at Windsor, and their commanding officer had to speak to one of the royal flunkies to get Andrew to stop hitting golf balls at the guardsmen on sentry duty late at night. A few had been struck and injured. I think in the end it had to be mentioned to the Queen. I mean, some of the stories we're getting about Andrew are really, really shocking today. A number of people ringing in saying they know him, texting in. Maybe you've some connection, maybe you've heard something. Very, very interesting in all of this. 0344 499 1000. I want to talk now about the RSPCA calling for urgent action over fireworks dangers. This is tonight, of course, is Halloween. Guy Fawkes Day coming up next week. The RSPCA saying that stronger regulations and greater public awareness are needed about fireworks after a horse was injured and a dog killed last year. Their campaign manager, Carrie Stones said thousands of animals suffer every year due to fireworks, sometimes with devastating consequences. We want to see a restriction of fireworks sales to licensed venues only and a limit to a set number of days when people can let off fireworks, enabling animal owners to plan ahead to protect their animals. Now, it would be wrong of me to say don't watch What Just Happened, which is on tonight between 9 and 10. It is a brilliant show. But there is another network which will remain anonymous because they're kind of one of our competitors, but every year they do a brilliant show which is music particularly for animals on Halloween, and I have listened to it in the past with Jack, and it certainly calmed him down because Jack, my cat, really doesn't like it. Ed really doesn't like fireworks, as you can imagine, and gets scared by them. So I close his cat flap, make sure he can't get out, keep him in at least until the fireworks stop, and then let him out, if he wants to go out in the middle of the night or whatever. Dominic Dyer is with us now, the animal welfare campaigner and chair of Nature 2030. Dominic, I saw you tweeting about this earlier this week, and it is a big concern, and people do let off fireworks willy-nilly. There are organised displays, of course, as well, which actually, if they're near you, it doesn't really help that they're organised. I just wonder what you think needs to happen and what should be done, because we want people to enjoy Halloween, we want people to enjoy Guy Fawkes Night, but there are lots of domestic animals and other animals as well that are really frightened by fireworks.
There are indeed, and it's good to join you this evening to talk about it. This is one of those long-standing political issues, Peter, that I can't understand why we can't get more regulation and control over the sale of and use of fireworks. This, if you look at the last decade, there's been 5 petition debates in Parliament on this. Each one 100,000 people sign. They take a lot to get those debates into Parliament. We've got another one at the moment, Red Wings Horse Sanctuary. I think over 40,000 people have signed that. And every time the previous government and this government come back and say, well, yes, we do understand there are concerns and problems, but we think a voluntary approach about how these products are sold and that people being responsible will be enough to avoid problems. It's getting worse. It gets worse every year. If you look at the sale of fireworks, largely unregulated. You can buy them online, you can buy them in stores, you can buy them in little units that pop up and down the country, pop-up sales centres, etc., where you can buy them without any control. They are dangerous to animals. Of course they are. We know they cause huge stress and problems to people's pets, huge stress and problems to horses and livestock, but then also to people. Military veterans with, post-traumatic stress, people with autism. There's whole sections of society that are terrified.
To say nothing of the people who aren't properly trained to, set them off. There are other aspects as well in Halloween and Halloween celebrations that can be very hazardous to animals. Some of that netting, for example.
The netting is a real problem, and again, and we're seeing that. That's a trend that's emerged. A lot of this from America. You can buy lots of different tack, to be quite honest with that.
So it's meant to look
when you're
like
spraying this onto your outside.
Yeah,
edges,
it's meant to look it's meant to look like spiders' webs, but actually can harm an awful lot of animals. I think, was it you or someone I saw this week? It might have been you, Dominic. Apologies if it wasn't. Who had a picture of a bird that was caught in that netting.
Yeah, and I can go down the road where I'm living here in Milton Keynes, and I see there's numerous hedges with it sprayed all over the place. It is terribly dangerous, not just to birds, but to insects and other, animals that inhabit hedges and hedgerows and things. It's just madness, but there's no control over any of this. So you've got, real problems here, I think, emerging because of a lack of regulation and control over products, fireworks, but also what you've just been mentioning in terms of those products as well. My concern around all of this is that actually this is a growing issue of public concern where politicians of all parties are failing to address it and to act on it. We've had numerous MPs putting forward private members' bills. As a Conservative MP recently, I was in the House of Commons with other NGOs and campaign groups, and he was doing what he could on this issue. He was pinning his hopes that Labour, who've got an animal welfare strategy that they say they're going to publish. I was in the House of Commons just over a week ago for an event the League Against Cruel Sports was hosting, and Baroness Hayman, the minister responsible, was again talking about this plan coming together, talking about hoping to get it issued before the end of the year. Is there going to be something in that plan around the restriction of sale of fireworks? I doubt it. There is a lobby from the industry that pushes back all the time about regulation and control. Ultimately, this is what I think should happen. We shouldn't allow unregulated sale of what are increasingly powerful, dangerous fireworks. We should restrict their sale to certain times of the year, which is what the RSPC is asking for. I think we should go further. We should only really allow the sale of silent fireworks, where visually you can get everything you're looking at, but without that huge sound.
Does such a thing exist, silent fireworks?
They do, yeah. Silent fireworks, there's lots of good silent fireworks.
I didn't know that. Didn't know that.
They'll give you all of the beauty of fireworks without the bang, to be quite honest. It's not that difficult to formulate a firework, so it gives you all the sparkle and light without the bang. But the bangs are getting louder. Some of these things are like mortars and bombs. My house shakes. This is like military action outside of your doorstep. And let's not forget, a lot of kids and things are getting involved in increasingly targeting animals and carrying out wildlife criminality. We've talked about that before with crossbows, with high-powered catapults. Also, we're seeing it with fireworks being targeted.
Where is it, Dominic? I saw, again, it might have been your Twitter, there are... there's a country in Europe, I think, where they have classes for children to be kind to animals and basically in school.
Denmark, Denmark, where this is part of the national curriculum, that you teach children at a young age, actually, that animals are sentient, that respect for animals is important because that in turn can lead to problems with violence with people and other things. I think
we should really absolutely do that in schools here.
Oh, absolutely. So, coming back to what we need to do, we need a proper decision taken by politicians to act on what is a growing public safety and animal welfare concern. I think if we allow this to go on in the way that we are, I think we're going to see more people harmed and more animals harmed and more distress across society, and it's unnecessary. I'd like to see Reform and other parties that jump up and down on various issues actually get involved in this as well, because this is a real genuine concern. You ask MPs, they get huge amounts of concerns raised with them this time of year. And, you've got Diwali, you've got Halloween, you've got Bonfire Night, you've got Christmas, you've got New Year. This goes on for months. It's not like a small time frame. Yeah, we can have organised displays. I go to them, you've been to them. They're great. If they're organised and planned and done properly, that's the way we should enjoy fireworks. But the idea that you can just have people just letting them off in the street willy-nilly into the early hours, I think we've got to do something about that. We really have to.
Dominic, thank you. That's Dominic Dyer there, who is an animal welfare campaigner and chair of Nature 2030. Lots to discuss on all of that. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Stephen Millings in Belfast says, trick-or-treating, all front curtains closed, cats safely indoors. Awful American custom we imported of trailing kids around houses begging for sweets. I would ban it, says Stephen. Well, I hope you and Sparkle are kept safe tonight. And Stephen, I was delighted to hear that you have that you're out of hospital now, and I wish you a full recovery. Stephen is a very, very loyal listener and viewer of my programmes, and I want to wish him all the very, very best, and indeed Sparkle as well. And I will reply to your email soon. I just haven't got round to it, but I was delighted to read its contents. Just on Prince Andrew, I should say, obviously, there's no suggestion that he was deliberately aiming at the guardsmen with the golf balls. That can't be proven. But apparently he was taking wild swings, according to Marion County Down, and guardsmen were hit by those golf balls. So bizarre stories about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and he is now known. We'll continue talking about that. Plenty of people have given us calls and messages. We will get to all of those, but in just a moment we're going to talk about the sport with Sean Custis. So stay with us here on Talk.
this man got the big changing room. And the news that has been coming out within that tribunal that's been taking place is absolutely insane. Rose was trying to impregnate a woman at the time. So it shows just how, I mean, there are photos that have also come out about this person, and he wasn't even trying to make an effort to identify as a woman. He wasn't going in the sort of fake nails, plastic boobs type of situation.
Well, he just turned up to work and went, I'm Rose, and demanded to be in the changing room.
Precisely.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks everybody who has been in touch, including Debbie, who says, advertise the silent fireworks. Everyone would rather have them. I don't know anyone who thinks the bang is great. I didn't know silent fireworks were a thing until about 5 minutes ago when Dominic Dyer told me about it. So I'm very, very glad to know that's a thing, and I would certainly support that. Faith says, hi Peter, we've got 4 rescue cats. Good for you, Faith. Adopt, don't shop. And fireworks are a massive problem where we live in a terrace street with everybody setting them off from now until the new year. I emailed my local MP recently about fireworks, sadly a Labour MP, and got back a big guffy email full of rubbish word salads and not really addressing the point, just dancing around it. Typical Labour or guff no action. I've signed countless petitions for all the various animal welfare charities, but none of the governments seem interested in helping animals, says Faith. Well, listen, I hope they do. And yeah, I have a rescue cat as well. Jack, as you know, legend, light of my life, sole reason to live. Let's talk about the sport.
Sports news from The Sun.
Well, the head of sport, no less, Sean Custis, is with us this evening. Hi, Sean, you well?
I am. You're going to miss me, aren't you? You've had a whole week of me.
I have. Are you not here next week?
I'm not here next week.
Oh,
no,
where are you off to?
I'm away working.
Away working? Oh, very mysterious, but
so,
good. But you're not sort of having feet up pina colada, you're not going to Barbados?
No, proper work, promise.
Okay, all right, good stuff. Well, I hope that is very good. After an action-packed week at the Carabao Cup, the Premier League is back this weekend. Talk us through your pick of the weekend's fixtures.
Well, Peter, you're familiar with Liverpool's troubles, aren't you? Because
I am indeed.
We've talked about them quite a lot.
I haven't forgotten.
5 domestic defeats in a row, 6 defeats in the last 7. Home to Aston Villa Saturday night, Liverpool are. Arnie Slot was saying today, no excuses, then listed about 6 excuses for why they're in the situation they're in. Look, they really need a win because I think the heat really will come on them if they lose to Aston Villa. And Aston Villa have been in very good form.
Yeah.
Difficult one. Man United are at Forest. Now, we got used to saying United were in crisis, but they've had 3 wins in a row. It's exactly a year now of Ruben Amorim in charge. And he has been talking about the fact, he did find it tough, difficult times for the year, but feels that they're coming out of it. There's lots of optimistic noises around Old Trafford.
They've got through their defence crisis.
They have. And the technical director, Jason Wilcox, was talking yesterday about the fact that they're going to back them with money and they're very happy with the way the team's going and things are looking up. Of course, that sort of tends to suggest they're going to come crashing back down to earth.
Yes.
But no, there is a bit of optimism around, and of course Nottingham Forest are struggling, but home game for new manager Sean Dyche. Forest will be hoping to turn that around. Arsenal, top of the league, should win at Burnley. Look, Burnley have done okay since they got promoted, but not brilliant.
You would expect Arsenal to win that match.
You would expect Arsenal to win. And then there's a curious game as well, early evening, which is Spurs-Chelsea, which is 2 big teams, but what are they going to achieve? They're probably not going to win the league. Fight for the top 4. Will either of them get in it? Chelsea have been inconsistent. Spurs under Thomas Frank, they're all right. They're a bit more resilient, but they've not sort of pulled up any trees. It's a bit of a strange game, that one, about that. Do they know what they can achieve? Yeah. And at the minute, I'm not sure we know at all.
Although the bit of information I can add to this is that those are both London clubs.
They are both London clubs. That's very, very good. And there'll be a lot of supporters there.
There will.
It's a big stadium. It's got 60,000.
It's not White Hart Lane anymore. They moved from there a few years ago.
They
didn't
have definitely moved.
Where have they moved to?
Just about 100 yards to the right, because they built half the stadium while they were knocking down the other stadium, and then they completed the stadium.
What's the new stadium called?
It's called the Tottenham Stadium.
Right, okay. Very original.
Yes, I know. I mean, they could have just still called it White Hart Lane, I thought, but no, it's Tottenham Stadium. And of course, it's not just football, it stages NFL and all sorts of things, and they want to be known as a stadium which does concerts and other things and that. So it's a bit more than a football stadium nowadays, but it is a great place to go to watch football. There's no doubt about it.
Have you seen other things there as well? Have you been to any concerts?
I've seen NFL there.
Right, yeah.
I'm not a huge NFL fan, but I have been to see that. No gigs, actually. I can't think of one. No, I tend to go to Wembley for my gigs.
Okay.
And the O2.
And the O2, yeah. You see Celine there now?
No. Where? Wembley?
Celine Dion was at the O2. Were you there? You didn't go to
I
that?
wasn't.
Okay.
Saw Queen there, though.
Surprised.
That was pretty good.
Okay.
Quite enjoyed that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
You were rocked. They did rock you.
Yes, I was rocked. I've seen a few people there at the O2.
Good stuff. In other Premier League news, the Christmas schedule has been released, but only one game on Boxing Day. How's that gone down with fans?
Well, a lot of fans I know couldn't care less. But I hesitate to say, is this a media-created storm? Because I know
position even thyself.
We've just been talking about this story in the office today, and I'm not bothered. There's the one Premier League game is Manchester United v Newcastle. It'll be in the evening at 8 o'clock, Boxing Day night. Pour yourself a beer, sit in front of the telly. I can't get up to Manchester for the game. Pour yourself a beer, watch the match. I'm quite happy with that. I think a lot of people would be quite happy watching that game. And then they can all get out on Saturday and watch the game, having had a little longer with the relatives than maybe they would have planned normally.
Exactly. Yeah. Far better than Call the Midwife Christmas special. Yeah, I'm forced to watch that every year, I'm afraid.
You wouldn't be watching the football. You'd surely be watching Call the Midwife special. Surely.
Or reading a book. And finally, in rugby, the Autumn Internationals return with a massive match at Twickenham. You're going, aren't you?
I am. I'm going to England v Australia. Of course, the Lions played Australia in the Soham. Maro Itoje, England captain, he led the Lions to the victory over the Wallabies.
The Wallabies, that is, of course, what the Australian team are known as.
Autumn Internationals, traditionally for Australia, they're coming to the end of a very long, hard season, so could they be a bit tired? I think we'd expect an England victory from this, and England, of course, building up to the World Cup. This is the start of their preparations, really. Full house. I'm looking forward to it. I haven't been to Twickenham this year, so I'm very much looking forward to that.
Well, have a really good time, Sean, and Godspeed on your work next week, and we'll see you before too long in the chair. That's Sean Custis, Head of Sport at The Sun. Thank you to him. Let's just remind ourselves of another big political controversy today. This is Zara Sultana, the Your Party MP, talking about Nigel Farage, calling him a fascist on a BBC podcast.
I do think he has all the features of a fascist politician, and I think it's important that we stop a fascist reform government.
Fascist.
When someone attacks trade union rights, when they are not supportive of minority communities, where they are trying to get us out of the ECHR so they can get away with anything and there is no state accountability, we can see what's happening across Europe, and that is a descent into fascism.
You're comparing Nigel Farage with Franco, with Mussolini, arguably with Adolf Hitler. Really?
I have legitimate concerns about what a Nigel Farage government would do to trade unionists, to working class communities, to minority communities, to LGBT people. And what I've seen in government is Nigel Farage and his colleagues, like I said, vote against trade union rights, vote against anything that would actually help our working class communities. So yes, he's a danger.
Caroline in London's given us a ring about this particular issue. Caroline, thanks so much for your company this evening. 0344 499 1000, the number Caroline has rung. What do you think about Zara Sultana's comments, Caroline?
Thanks, Peter, for putting me on. You know what? My heart is pounding. I can't even put to words how I'm feeling. This is the United Kingdom, and we have a woman who's using the most heinous hate crime. This is not about what you like.
It's not a hate crime, but it is a very strong word, certainly, to use.
Well, okay, so the government have taken Farage's security away, so he's got to get his own security, okay? There are riots, well, not riots, there was that heinous thing in Tower Hamlets, which the police allowed 200 men
Do you know what? Do you know what, Caroline? That's a really good point. We've been trying to get a statement out of the Metropolitan Police for a number of days on this, without success. We'd like to know why what happened in Tower Hamlets, that Islamist show of strength that was on Sunday, actually happened, and the police didn't intervene. And the Metropolitan Police just haven't got back to us on that. We're asking all the time, but it really is a big, big issue. There are lots of threats to our way of life, Caroline.
Well, this is my point. You know, a man walking his dog gets knifed. A woman walks a 1-year-old girl, gets stabbed 25 times or whatever with a screwdriver. This country has gone. It's not going. And I have not slept for 3 days thinking, what am I going to do? Do I leave this country? Where do I go? But this is my country. And
I'm so sorry to hear you're having trouble sleeping, Caroline. I hope you get some resolution to that.
No. I'm fine. It's just that, you know, this is massive.
It's a big issue. From Zara Sultana's point of view, should she have the freedom of speech to say that? Should she be allowed to make that criticism of Nigel Farage? Because look, we're the home of free speech. We hear things all the time we disagree with. But I just wonder, you know, if Nigel Farage had said something like that about her, I'm sure the left would be jumping all over this.
Well, if you said that, you would have lost your job, Peter. And if I said that, I would be in prison or arrested. We know that. I'm fed up with this free speech rubbish. Everything you and me have known in our lives has gone, Peter. Free speech is being used for other things that we know that we've already mentioned. So that's gone. Our way of life is going. We haven't got free speech. We have a two-tier system, and the British people are fourth down the line. If I'm in trouble, I can't get hold of the police. If I need a doctor, I can't get a doctor. Everything in this country has crumbled. And every single day we hear that the illegal immigrants getting this, that, the other free. And it's insanity. And it's not it's out and on. The one thing that really worries me, Peter, is that the huge majority in this country have no idea what's going on. They don't watch YouTube. They don't follow YouTubers, Dan Wootton. They don't listen to talkTV, and nothing is on the mainstream media, Sky News, Channel 4. And then you've got BBC One, BBC, Nick Robbins, giving her airtime.
He did challenge her, Caroline. He did challenge her.
No. If it was on the other foot, it was very weak.
Okay.
And where do we go with this, Peter? I love talkTV. You give me hope. Your channel gives me hope.
Well, thank you, Caroline.
But where do we go with it?
Well, it's a big question. What we are going to now, Caroline, I can tell you, is the news. So unfortunately, we're just going to end the call. But I do very much appreciate what you're saying. And I think you sum up the views of so many people and the despondency. And just in regard to getting to sleep at night, I hope you do. I hope you get some peace of mind, because there are a lot of people very worried about the future direction of this country. We'll talk more about that in the next hour. Do get in touch.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, you're very welcome to Talk Drive if you're just tuning in, or if you've been with us for the last couple of hours. Thank you for sticking with us. There's loads to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. More on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as he's now known, the mechanism by which he'll be stripped of his titles, the parliamentary, constitutional and royal history of this, and indeed how it's all done. Daniel Britton, our resident expert, is standing by for that in just a few minutes' time. We'll also talk this hour about what's in the Sun tomorrow. We'll talk to their assistant news editor, and also long A&E waits causing heartbreaking suffering. We'll talk to Roy Lilly about that, because it is a very, very big issue. And if you've been in A&E recently, really in the last few years, you will know that these waits can cause so many unintended consequences and issues. If you want to get in touch about any of that, including Andrew, including Zara Sultana, what she said, calling Nigel Farage a fascist, whatever you want to talk about it. Maybe it's Rachel Reeves on her home. 03444 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute please. Send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring. All on the main number, 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss between now and 7 o'clock, when Samara Gill will be in the chair. So stay with us here on Talk Drive. Well, lots to discuss on Andrew, certainly, and the government, of course, has reacted to the bombshell statement last night by King Charles. No one expected it, no one predicted it, in regard to the fact that Andrew will no longer be Prince Andrew. He is moving out of Royal Lodge. He's moving to Sandringham, which is a private royal estate. It's owned by the royal family, unlike Windsor, which is essentially ours. It's the Crown estate, so it's sort of owned by the taxpayer, essentially. Earlier, the Trade Minister, Sir Chris Bryant, spoke about the King's decision on the BBC.
I warmly support what the King is doing today. I think that the vast majority of people in this country will think that it's the right thing to do. You know, when you think of what Virginia Giuffre and other victims went through in the whole situation with Jeffrey Epstein, I think everybody will come to the conclusion that the King's doing the right thing, and we stand ready to support whatever the King thinks is necessary for us to do in this regard.
Sir Chris Bryant there, who is a Trade Minister, talking to the BBC about Andrew. I'm really interested in terms of the nuts and bolts of all of this, how it actually works. And Daniel Britton is with me now. He's a political, constitutional and royal historian. Daniel, it's always great to talk to you. I just wonder what the actual mechanism for this is, because the Liberal Democrats about a week ago were saying there should be a parliamentary debate about it. Now, that would have been a non-binding vote on the government, but when it comes to how this is actually done, there's a lot that the King can do himself, isn't there?
Oh, it's very much down to the King. Thank you for asking me, Peter. It's very much down to the King. The method used is a warrant in the King's sign manual, in other words, signed by his own hand. And that usually leads to letters patent or some other form of instruction. So, funnily enough, it is quite easy to do this and has been done in the past. Essentially, a warrant is a directive from the King, which he signs. It was done in 1917 to take away the HRH and the Prince titles from some rather more German members of the royal family who actually lived in Germany and slightly unfortunately fought for Germany in the First World War. So they had their HRHs taken away and their Prince titles. In 1919, not many people know this bit, 1919, Princess Patricia, who was a granddaughter of Queen Victoria, wanted to give up her titles voluntarily, entirely voluntarily, because she was going to marry a naval officer and she didn't want to be an HRH and a princess anymore. And that, again, was done by a royal warrant, entirely voluntary, and she was never a princess again.
So this can be done pretty easily by the King, but of course it hasn't been done for a long time. Do you think more of this might come perhaps when William becomes king, and there might be a situation where he says, look, if you're not a working royal, you can't be an HRH, gets rid of Harry and Meghan and perhaps a few other hangers-on?
Well, it's clearly a possibility. what happened in that same time, roughly 1917, George V, it was then, limited HRHs to the children of the sovereign and the eldest heir, son in those days, of the Prince of Wales. They were the only people who became armed, and princesses, and then their children also did, but limited to that. That was very much limited on what it had been before. But goodness, that is 107 years ago, Peter. A new king might well make changes. This king might well make changes, for all we know. They have to dust off the constitutional books to get it all up and running on this occasion.
Yes, it's interesting as well in regard to the succession, because Andrew is 8th in line to the throne. It's unlikely that, we always heard about the heir and the spare, and indeed Harry's autobiography was simply called Spare. Andrew is 8th in line to the throne. It's unlikely those 7 people who are in line to the throne are all going to die, meaning he would then be the monarch. But it doesn't look as if he's going to be excluded from the line of succession. Is that significant? What's happened before, and how could he be excluded if that was an option?
Well, I'm sure they're hoping that he wouldn't succeed. But I do remember 20 years ago, there was some kind of coup in Nepal, and the king was killed. I think the heir was killed. Quite a few people ended up being killed, and some rather unlikely person became king. Didn't last terribly long, because there was then another revolution and he was got rid of. But he was on the throne for about 5 years. So it has happened and could, in theory, happen. It would require legislation to change it. And I think if it started looking at all possible, I imagine legislation would be promoted extremely quickly, Peter.
What about the constitutional position of Beatrice, Eugenie, and presumably Sarah doesn't have, Fergie doesn't have any constitutional status at all?
No, she has absolutely no status, and never actually did, except by virtue of being Andrew's wife and as a duchess. But no, she will have lost that, and she has no constitutional status. But the children do keep their status as princesses. They do keep their status, and some have wondered if they might take on, in due course, royal duties. There's no reason why their father's behaviour should particularly impact on them.
What can we expect to see, if anything, of Andrew? Is he going to turn up at funerals, weddings, those kind of things, or is he now an unperson? Has he been completely royally cancelled?
He seems to be pretty cancelled, Peter. But one thing does puzzle me, and I've been thinking about this. The royal family always has Christmas at Sandringham. And is Andrew going to be all by himself with his supermarket turkey roast on his lap, having his Christmas lunch and watching the King's speech? Are they not going to invite him up? We hear not. In fact, a few weeks ago, he was disinvited from Christmas, wasn't he?
Yes, and we're told he won't be at Sandringham at all this Christmas, and he's actually going to move in next year to Sandringham, so it'll avoid this year in regard to Christmas anyway. But subsequent years,
get rid of that problem. Well, in
subsequent years, they'll have that problem, though.
Yes, it will. And the Order of the Garter service, for example, last occasion was in June, annual service there. Prince Andrew did attend, as he then was, but he didn't take any part in the public processions where the Garter Knights come down the hill at Windsor Castle and take their places in St George's Chapel. He was just already in the chapel and had been got there in a car and in quietly by a rear door. Now, he may or may not be. I'm not entirely sure whether he actually is a Knight of the Garter at the moment. I presume not. That requires a different set of orders to be signed. And indeed the Victorian Order, because he's a member of the Victorian Order. That's an easy one. It simply requires a directive from the King taking him off the Victorian Order. That's exactly what happened to Sir Anthony Blunt, if you remember him, the Cambridge spy.
Yes, spying for the Russians,
1979. So the Victorian Order is easy. the Order of the Garter is fairly easy, but it's not the same document as the HRH and the Prince. Hitherto, to remove a peerage, it has required an Act of Parliament. But it seems on this occasion they've managed to find a way, and a warrant is sufficient. I should think King Charles is very keen that there should not be a parliamentary debate on an Act of Parliament removing Andrew's title. That could lead to all sorts of other discussions, particularly on royal finances.
Daniel, as always, thank you. Daniel Britton, parliamentary, constitutional and royal historian. Love his nerdery. I absolutely love it. I wish I had it. I just don't have that skill to the same degree. Daniel is superb. Let's hear a couple of voice notes. Chloe has sent one in on Prince Andrew.
Hi, Peter. On Mr. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, his defrustration is very good. That's good to see. However, how about Peter Mandelson? Has he got away scot-free? Does he now go and sit in the House of Lords? He had some interesting emails from Epstein as well, I seem to recall.
Chloe, really interesting point there, actually. And Chris Bryant, that Labour minister, Sir Chris Bryant, you saw, he was asked a bit earlier, I think it was on Times Radio, which is part of our stable of stations, and I think he was asked on Times Radio, and he said that he didn't feel that Peter Mandelson should lose his title. Tarquin in London, I think, has some thoughts on this. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Tarquin, you're very welcome to the programme. What do you make of the Mandelson issue? I think that's what you gave us a ring about.
Indeed, Peter. Just before your voice note correspondent there happened to kind of steal my thunder in a little bit of a way there, but never mind. Yeah, but I just think, as soon as I heard that maybe Andy was going to turn King's evidence when it comes to Epstein in order to save his lagging reputation, whatever there's left of that, and it occurred to me that Yum Peter, of course, has got a lot of a track record too, hasn't he, with Mr. Epstein?
They were certainly friends, and they certainly had very warm emails and said, "You're your best pal."
Yes, Yum, and I thought that maybe Peter's not getting much sleep at the moment, thinking, OMG, what's Andy going to say about what he knows about
there's no suggestion that Peter Mandelson has actually broken the law. What we do know is that association with Epstein was a very close one.
Indeed, and I think that possibly that there's going to be a lot of reticence amongst the Fabian establishment, like Starmer and Blair, etc. Oh my God, what's going to get divulged here? Because Andy's got no end, no loyalty there, no honour amongst thieves, is there, Peter?
Thanks for that, Tarquin. I appreciate that. As Tarquin in London, and again, just to keep Tarquin and me on the right side of the law, just to be absolutely clear, no suggestion that Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, has broken the law in any way. Let's hear another voice note. Jerry on Prince Andrew.
I was in the Royal Navy in the 70s and 80s, and when Prince Andrew was a midshipman, he passed through HMS Phoenix, which was a training damage control unit. When there, we played sports against all the cadets that came through, and when asked what we should call him on the football and rugby pitches, he said, "The Prince Andrew will do." He was arrogant then, as a youngster of 16 or 17. He hasn't changed.
Jerry, thank you. My goodness, what should we call you? My word. Yeah, I remember I took Jon Snow. We came to my university and we went out for a dinner before the event. And I said, thanks for coming, Mr. Snow. He said, "Peter, call me John." I said, "Thank you so much, John. You can call me Mr. Cardwell." Steve is in Leeds and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Steve, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say on Andrew?
Well, on Andrew, I'm not here to defend Prince Andrew for being an arrogant, self-indulgent prat. But what I am concerned about is the way that the media these days seems to be judge, jury and executioner on people's lives. So it's a dangerous road we go down when everybody's saying he's guilty, he's guilty, he's guilty. Well, they said that about Lord Britton and Leon Britton and Cliff Richard when that guy with the obviously mental problems came forward and said he was part of a paedophile.
Well, I don't know, Steve, if what Prince Andrew is guilty of criminally, if he's guilty of anything. He denies all those allegations. What I do know is that he's had dreadful judgment. He is the author of his own downfall. He voluntarily gave an interview to Newsnight where he said things that turned out not to be true. That is the media might have some role in this, and yeah, they may have hounded him, but maybe he should be hounded.
Well, if you want to hound people, Hound the people in the rape gangs that got a third of the sentence served and went back to live in the same community as the girls they raped. Hound Hugh Edwards, who got £250,000 from the BBC and has gone back and living quietly in his house as a registered sex offender. It's not right for the press to do what they're doing. If he's guilty, put him on trial, find him guilty and lock him up. But we live in a world
this is the
now
king
where
who's made this decision. I mean, the king is someone who, you know, doesn't have to be influenced by the media. He doesn't have to be influenced by you, by the public, by anybody. He can do what he wants, can he not?
Naive. You're not that naive when you say the prince isn't influenced by public opinion. When you've got opinion polls saying the support of the monarchy has gone down by 52%, he's going to do what he needs to do to make sure that the royal family is protected.
You made it really clear, Steve. Okay, you made it really clear at the start of this call that you're not supporting Prince Andrew. You're not excusing.
No, I'm not.
I'm not accusing you of doing that, Steve. But do you think it's right that he has lost his titles, or do you think that the king has done the wrong thing here, or alternatively has just bowed to pressure when he should have stayed strong?
I think the right thing to do would have been to take him to court and removed his titles on the basis of him being found guilty. You had Peter Blexley on, who said, I would rather be tried by a jury than by judges on the political establishment. Ask him if he'd rather be tried by the media or a jury. I'm quite happy for Prince Andrew to go to court, take him to court, do him, and as a consequence of that, strip him of his titles and put him in jail.
Well, listen, there may well be private prosecutions against Prince Andrew, just to say he denies all the allegations against him. But don't you think, Steve, that he could have helped himself, and still could help himself actually, if he, for example, went to America, said to law enforcement there, here's everything I know. Here's all my emails, here's all my diaries, here's all my schedule. This is everything, this is the whole kit and caboodle in regard to my relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I'll answer any question you've got. Do you know what? What he did was dreadful, an evil, calculating, dreadful paedophile. I had a catastrophic error of judgment where I trusted him. I want to help these victims. I want to give anything I can do to help. And he hasn't done that.
No, and look at it from this point of view, right? The last person who risked naming everybody suddenly committed suicide in his cell while the CCTV was off. Don't tell me that there are people out there who are very, very powerful, and even Prince Andrew, to be fair to him, is not safe if he opens his mouth. Now, he may not open his mouth because he's getting paid money. That's where his money comes from. But we don't
know that, Steve. We don't know that.
Potentially a lot more. We don't. But okay. People behind this are potentially a lot more powerful, and he's obviously got the royal family saying, "Don't say anything because it's going to affect us." So,
well, we don't know what he's got the royal family doing, but there's still, as you correctly say, Steve.
Where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, and as you correctly say, there are still plenty of questions in all of this. So, Steve, listen, thanks for your call. I appreciate it. That is Steve in Leeds there. I appreciate the call this evening. Thanks to everybody who's been in touch about animals as well. Hilary in Worcestershire says, Peter, I'm so glad your guest Dominic mentioned veterans. This is to do with fireworks, animals, and Halloween, which is, of course, tonight. I'm so glad Dominic Dyer mentioned veterans, says Hilary. I have a dear friend who was in the military for 30 plus years and had to be medically discharged due to injuries from Afghanistan. Fireworks are a horrendous experience for him due to his PTSD. The problem is there's no particular day they're set off. He could prepare himself if there was. He doesn't want to spoil people's fun, but I know how terrible he feels when they just go off without warning. Great show as always, says Hilary. Well, thank you, and we are thinking about your friend, and he served this country, and PTSD is a horrific thing. Penny in Essex says, Caroline's call said everything that 99% of people in this country feel. I'm glad we're becoming old and knackered and hopefully won't be here much longer, says Penny. Stacey says, she's in Llanelli, she says, my 14-year-old dog is terrified of fireworks. It's awful to see her shaking and scared to move. I think they should be banned and just the ones without bangs allowed. I hope Jack has company tonight to keep him safe from the trick-or-treaters, says Stacey. Fear not, I'm going home after the show. I'm actually doing a quick chat with Times Radio, but I am going home and Jack will be given all the love and affection that he is used to every evening, fear not, as we sit down to watch a bit of telly and stay safe from the fireworks. Rob in Dublin says, loving the show as usual. Brilliant, you're highlighting the poor animals this time of year, scared to death over fireworks. As you know, as we have cats that own us, Halloween, Guy Fawkes and New Year's Eve are the worst time of the year for both animals and owners, says Rob. Well, thank you for that, Rob, and I wish you all the best in Dublin. And actually, around Christmas time, I will be in Dublin, so I'm looking forward to that. Right then, we're going to talk in just a second to Roy Lilly about long A&E waits causing heartbreaking suffering. Tell us your stories of all of this. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk.
Rose, this man, got the big changing room, and the news that has been coming out within that tribunal that's been taking place is absolutely insane. Rose was trying to impregnate a woman at the time, so it shows just how, I mean, there are photos that have also come out about this person, and he wasn't even trying to make an effort to identify as a woman. He wasn't going in the sort of fake nails, plastic boobs type of situation.
Well, he just turned up to work and went, I'm Rose, and demanded to be at the changing room.
Precisely.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just some breaking news, and Donald Trump has posted on his platform Truth Social. He is making Nigeria a country of particular concern. We know there's been unrest there recently. Al-Qaeda have carried out various attacks. Christians are gradually being wiped out in Nigeria as millions face death, displacement and kidnapping from jihadist groups. That's according to several NGOs. Lots of reporting around that. There have been allegations of a genocide against Christians which are denied. There is a coup attempt. So it'll be very interesting to see what Donald Trump says about that and how that develops. I should say on my programme tomorrow we're going to discuss both Sudan and Nigeria, because I'm on between 10 and 1 tomorrow, because there's so many in the mainstream media who will not discuss these issues, who will not discuss the big issues in Sudan, the genocide there, which is an actual genocide, unlike the one that has been talked about so much in the Palestinian territory. So tomorrow I will be talking about that on my show, both on Talk Drive and particularly at the weekend as well, talks about some of the stories that other elements of the media won't tell you, either because they don't want to or they're not interested. So both Sudan and Nigeria will be discussed tomorrow. That is happening. I want to talk now about the government that has been urged to get a grip on long A&E waits, with campaigners saying it is the rot eating away at the heart of the NHS. This is Age UK, the charity for older people. Old people. I hate when people say older people. Old people falling into that trap. The Age UK comes as it publishes a report dealing heartbreaking stories of old people, suffering, spending hours in corridors and side rooms, people being left in their own excrement, having blood transfusions, and even dying in these makeshift treatment areas. And actually, West Streeting was on last Sunday with me, and corridors were something that people certainly want to talk about. Age UK says while 12-hour waits were once virtually unheard of in emergency departments, now they've become the norm in too many places. It highlighted the case, numerous cases, including one of an 86-year-old who was left in a disused corridor for 36 hours. Well, Roy Lilly is a former NHS Trust chairman. Roy, this is becoming all too common and is causing misery for so many people.
You're right, it is. It's been terrible. This year, there's been a big effort to try and make sure it doesn't happen. I mean, listen, I don't think they're going to stop people being looked after in corridors, but there's a big effort gone on this year. There's been, since June, I saw the first draft of the winter plan in June, and since then there's been a lot of scenario planning and a lot of resource planning as well to try and stop it happening. The NHS has experimented last year with really hospital at home, virtual hospitals they call it, where they support people with technology where it's appropriate so people can be looked after in their own homes. And they've done a lot to identify people that, you know, we might call frequent flyers, the people that we know are likely to end up in A&E. They've identified them and they've tried to put more support in the community to stop the admissions. But Peter, you know, this report, which is very good, it's very hard-hitting, it does highlight two things which I think is worth making the point. You and I have discussed before the difficulty in discharging people from hospital. That thing sort of clogs the flow up through the system. And that's because local authorities have had their budgets have been really cut, and they haven't been able to get the care packages in place to get people home safely. That's only one part of the story. The other part of the story is that local authorities have a statutory duty to look after people. It's called adult social care. They are obliged to do it. They've got very little wriggle room. All they can do is to put up the eligibility criteria. And what has happened now, there's around 2 million people, elderly, frail, older people, old people, whatever you want to call them. 2 million of them who either used to get care or would be entitled to it previously and no longer get care. And so there's a huge cohort of older people who are vulnerable in the community who are not getting support. And because you know what happens, they don't look after themselves, they get a UTI, they have a fall. You know, all of this is very, very predictable, and it's because effectively the government has parked reform to social care. They put it in the hands of the Casey report, which doesn't come out now for another 3 years. There's an interim report that's supposed to be coming out, I don't know when, it's too late for this winter. But they have to resolve the issues of social care. Yeah. They've got to stop people coming in the first place, and once they're in, they've got to speed them through the system and get them home safely.
What about
part of this?
Yeah, what about those 12-hour waits themselves? Because the report pointed to data obtained under the Freedom of Information Act from NHS England, showing there were more than 1.7 million 12-hour waits in 24-25 at major hospitals. Around 1 in 10 people who attended A&E were waiting more than 12 hours. That's totally unacceptable.
Yeah. It is. I mean, 1 in 10 means that 9 out of 10 didn't, but 1 in 10 of a big number is a big number, and I absolutely get that. And as I say, I think this year there's a huge amount of effort that's going into. I mean, the other thing, of course, is vaccinations. Older people, you know, are being encouraged to have vaccinations so they don't get the flu and they don't get COVID and what have you. The government has really rather short-sightedly, I think, curtailed the access to COVID vaccinations for a big chunk of the community, and that doesn't help either. But there is, as I say, there has been a huge effort to try and plan a way around it this year, because nobody wants people in corridors. The hospitals don't want people in corridors. The nurses and doctors don't want to work in corridors. But what can you do when the hospital is chock-a-block? You can't close the door and say go away, so you have to find somewhere to put them, and it's really difficult.
Roy, as always, thank you. Roy Lilly there, former NHS Trust Chairman, joining us on Talk Drive this evening. Lots on animals coming in. Penny in Essex says, dogs have owners, cats have staff. Yeah, I know it. Still miss our Siamese, who we had from 3 months old until she was 19. An adorable Moggy. Well, Penny, they do leave paw prints on her heart. I must say that Clyde, who was my cat when I was a child and a teenager, I still miss her all the time. I think she sent me Jack. With reference to the conversation this evening about school children being taught about the importance of kindness to animals, says this texter, I volunteer for Animal Aid. I go into junior schools to talk to the children about the responsibilities of having pets and being kind to animals as part of the focus subject. That's brilliant. I'm delighted to hear that. That's really, really good that that happens. It should happen in every single school, and well done for you for volunteering. That's brilliant. It's really important to volunteer with something, give a bit of your time. I do a bit of volunteering with a young man who's in the care system. He'll soon be 21, and then I'm going to move on and do the same thing again. And he's taught me so much, and volunteering with animals is great. I actually used to, sorry to virtue signal, but I used to volunteer with Cats Protection in Northern Ireland. They have a great shelter up in Dundonald there, and it's really, really nice. And the animals are so well cared for, of course, but as we all know, it is important to adopt and not shop. And if you do want an animal, if you do want a domestic animal, go to an animal shelter. No use going to a breeder. Don't do that. No need. There are loads of animals who want your love. They're in shelters, and you can help those shelters by giving those animals a lovely, lovely home. Adopt, don't shop. It is my mantra. I'm never, ever going to stop saying it. Phil in Portsmouth says, what is wrong with all our politicians? Reform seems to be the only party that have our country's interests at heart, and everyone else just seems to want to slag off Nigel Farage, dragging politics into the gutter. No wonder people are losing interest. Leslie says, the right decision on Andrew, but what about Mandelson? I'm so glad the Queen is not here to witness this shame. Paul in Worcester says, Rachel Reeves made a mistake. I don't believe she willfully broke the law. Let's combat her on the dreadful fiscal policy instead. If you go down this road, most politicians will get done for some minor administrative error, as would most of us. I hate Labour, I hate left-wing ideology, but this is not a stick that we should beat her with, says Paul. And just one final one before the break. Sean in Bridlington says, I'm not sure the act of not getting a licence should do for Rachel from admin. However, the fact she cannot run even the most basic affairs of her own should immediately disqualify her from running the economy of a G7 country. Lots to discuss, including what is in the Sun tomorrow. Stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Margaret's been in touch from Birmingham. Thanks for your message, Margaret. She says, hello, Peter. Hello, Margaret. The Just Stop Oil protesters also escaped sentence who spread the planes. What is wrong with these judges? Well, it was a jury, of course, that let them off. Planes now Stonehenge. Nothing to see here, obviously, the court says Margaret. Jane says, I think I must be the only person who doesn't care about Andrew. So many people in the UK are struggling at the moment. This isn't their priority. Well, it is. Jane, I know exactly where you're coming from, and a lot of people will say, look, there are bigger stories. But loads of people want to talk about it. We've had loads and loads of calls. We're going to take more of those between now and 7 o'clock. And it's going to be a big story in The Sun tomorrow as well. Tom Seward is the assistant news editor of the paper. Tom, great to have you in the studio again. Andrew, there's so much more to say, of course, and you'll be reporting on it tomorrow.
Exactly. Huge story for The Sun. We're going to have great coverage in tomorrow's paper. 2 spreads again, exactly the same as in today's paper. We've got comment pieces coming out of our ears. You know, Arthur Edwards, the royal photographer, who's been, you know, the most experienced royal photographer.
He's an institution.
Exactly. You know, he's he'll be saying some words. We've got a brilliant kind of big feature from a historian called Anthony Selden, just looking at kind of just how unprecedented what King Charles has done really is. And there are all sorts of like really interesting details that have been coming out today. So, you know, looks like he's going to have to give back some of those bits that he's borrowed from the royal collection.
Artwork and things like that.
Exactly, including a sword that I think it was Princess Beatrice used to sort of fake knight Ed Sheeran, and in fact bloodied him in the process at some party.
Right.
Absolutely extraordinary. And also the lowdown on what's going to happen to the corgis as well when he finally goes to Sandringham. These are corgis famously that Sarah Ferguson thinks that Queen Elizabeth, the late Queen Elizabeth, is speaking to her through. So all of the details.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Fergie thinks Queen Elizabeth II is speaking to her through the corgis.
Precisely, yeah. I mean, this is a story that's been going around for
I vaguely remember now.
Some time. I don't know what the corgis are telling her this week. Maybe it's leave.
Yes, I think they may well be doing that. Let's talk about migration. Britain's one in, one out migrant deal with France. 75 people returned, and an Egyptian asylum seeker who's committed 19 crimes has won a court fight to stay in Britain. What on earth is going on here?
Well, every single time I come on here, we talk about migration. I mean, what a farce. It just gets more and more farcical, doesn't it? 75 sent back under the one in, one out, but we've got this hokey-cokey migrant who was out, then he's back in, and he's still in. The Home Secretary has vowed to send him home immediately, but he's still not left.
And Channel 4 News reporting the other night about people who've been sent back to Paris or another part of France, I'm not quite sure where it is, and there's no security, so they can just come back if they want to, or attempt to come back anyway on small boats.
Precisely, and now they know the things to say in order to stay here, whether it's modern slavery or what have you. We've got huge kind of migrant coverage in tomorrow's paper, as you would expect. So we've had a chat with the family of that 14-year-old girl who was sexually assaulted by Hadoush Kabatu. Her dad said that £500 payment and the early release would have been, or was, the biggest level of disrespect that they could face. Wow. And I mean, who can disagree with them? And as you say, my colleague Nick Parker has got a great story about this Egyptian asylum seeker. He's a convicted robber, committed 19 crimes. He's won a court fight to stay in Britain, and he can remain anonymous because, and just wait for it, he's got mental health issues. So we can't say who he is, despite him being a convicted robber.
19 crimes, we can't even say who he is. Yeah, I mean, I think, well, look, he may well have mental health issues. I wouldn't wish them on my worst enemy. I suffer from them myself, but it also is used as an all too convenient excuse sometimes. The Royal British Legion volunteers, tell us about this, abused by left-wing idiots as they put up Remembrance Day poppies in a Welsh town.
Exactly, so this is Penarth near Cardiff. Cops are investigating. So these Royal British Legion volunteers, they were abused whilst they were putting up poppies in the town. So it's just foul-mouthed threats, really. I presume that these people, I think they thought that they were putting up flags, and you know, just the usual kind of abuse and threats, and just idiots. I mean, you know, it's not political, as this mum Karen Jones, who was targeted by these abusive idiots, said. It's not, the poppy appeal is not political. It's about remembering those who died. I mean, we're both wearing poppies. You know, it's about respect. And Karen Jones and these volunteers didn't get any of that.
Well, Karen was shown an absolute lack of respect. Let's talk about AI and whether AI can tell you what to get people for Christmas.
Brilliant story. This is a little poll, I think. Nearly half of shoppers say that they're going to use AI this year to choose their Christmas gifts. I don't know how much you use AI.
A little bit, not very much.
A little bit. Well, tell you what, Peter, I asked ChatGPT, other AI tools are available.
No, you didn't.
What we should get you for Christmas.
Right.
And we said who you were and where you were, and so they did a little search on you. It said, I'd go with a serious book. Democracy, 11 Writers, which was written by all sorts of clever people whose names I didn't recognise, combined with a practical travel mug. Apparently it gives both depth and utility. So I don't know. We did look for a travel mug that had the sun written on it, but we couldn't find one. And then it went on to give this little nugget. It suggested I buy you signed copies of your own book, which apparently are just shy of £11 on your own website. So we've ordered a couple of those.
Glad to hear at petercardwell.com. Yeah, it would be an Ofcom breach if I didn't say that Political Animals is out in all good bookstops and on Amazon. You brought it up, Tom. You know, I'm merely responding to what a guest has said, so there we are. That's very funny. That's very funny. I'm glad in the incredibly busy Sun News desk that you had time to do that, Tom.
Always got time for a bit of fun, Peter.
Of course, of course. I look forward to receiving those gifts. I don't think I will be. Lots to discuss with our viewers and listeners, and maybe you could tell me what to give Tom for Christmas as well. That's Tom Seward there, who is Assistant News Editor at The Sun. Thanks very much indeed for coming in. Have a lovely weekend, and plenty to discuss here. Rachel Reeves, Andrew, Farage, loads of people getting in touch. You can get your call in too between now and 7 o'clock, or indeed tomorrow and Sunday. I'm on between 10 and 1, and lots of time to have a chat about whatever you want to talk about, including what Len in North Wales has said. There are 300,000 Palestinian activists going to hold a rally in Birmingham on the 6th of November, says Len. What are they protesting about? Now there's a ceasefire in Gaza. The government should ban this meeting as it could lead to clashes between rival factions. If you want to get your call in, 0344 499 1000, plenty still to come, and then we'll have a chat with Samara Gill as well. She's here between 7 and 9 in this studio, and then on what just happened between 9 and 10. Stay with us.
It's his little boy lie that has got him into this deep trouble. It's pathetic.
The downfall, looking back at all of this, was the arrogance in thinking that you were going to outsmart the BBC.
Yes, and the nation and the world.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was that entitle and arrogance was on, and delusion was on full display for the world to see. And you know, when you see something like that, it challenges you and you say, well, I'm going to catch you in a lie. And what he did right there was he inspired, including Virginia, a lot of people to catch him in a lie.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, one of the main stories that people want to talk about in this programme, and we're going to talk to Kevin and Basingstoke about it in a second, is Zara Sultana, the co-leader of your party. She has said some controversial things, including that she believes Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, is a fascist. She was talking to Nick Robinson, who is one of the main BBC presenters, on his podcast Political Thinking. Let's just hear what Zara Sultana said.
I do think he has all the features of a fascist politician, and I think it's important that we stop a fascist reform government.
Fascist.
When someone attacks trade union rights, when they are not supportive of minority communities, where they are trying to get us out of the ECHR so they can get away with anything and there is no state accountability, we can see what's happening across Europe, and that is a descent into fascism.
You're comparing Nigel Farage with Franco, with Mussolini, arguably with Adolf Hitler. Really?
I have legitimate concerns about what a Nigel Farage government would do to trade unionists, to working class communities, to minority communities, to LGBT people. And what I've seen in government is Nigel Farage and his colleagues, like I said, vote against trade union rights, vote against anything that would actually help our working class communities. So yes, he's a danger.
Rafi's been in touch about this and says Nigel Farage simply has to bulldoze through this nonsense. The working classes in Britain have been suppressed for decades. Trade unions were meant to protect them. That women's focus, Zara Sultana's focus, is on immigrants and benefits, not on the indigenous British working class who've been neglected. Kevin in Basingstoke, as I said, has given us a ring about it, 0344 499 1000. Kevin, what's your perspective on this?
Well, first of all, thank you for putting me on. I was really surprised that I was going to get on.
Well, you're on now. What do you think?
Well, I've looked up what a fascist person is on to see if it fits Nigel Farage, and I would say it does tick a lot of the boxes. It talks about a cult, and people have said, people that vote for reform or like him, they're a bit like Donald Trump. They're in a cult. It says.
Do you honestly think, Kevin, that 35% of people in this country who say they're going to vote Reform UK are in a cult?
Well, I mean, it also says a charismatic leader, somebody who's very divisive and uses...
yes, but there are lots of charismatic leaders who aren't... Barack Obama was a charismatic leader. Bill Clinton is a charismatic leader. Tony Blair is a charismatic leader. All of them are divisive people. It doesn't make them fascists.
No, but it also says a disdain and dislike of immigrants and ethnic groups, and somebody that would take away your human rights.
Do you honestly believe that Nigel Farage is going to take away people's human rights?
Well, he's talking about coming out of the ECHR.
That doesn't mean that you don't have human rights at the end of it. It simply means that you're coming out of the European Convention on Human Rights. We would still have human rights.
Yeah, but the human rights would be given to us by whatever he decided to give us, wouldn't
Well, they're given to us by the European Convention on Human Rights previously, so... I mean, that is a legitimate political argument to have, is it not? And he wants to achieve that through democracy. So how does that make him a fascist?
Well, because he would change our human rights, and then we wouldn't have the safety net of a the European Court of Human Rights, would we? So if we did have a fascist government, we wouldn't have any protection from it because we couldn't take it anywhere else apart from our own courts.
But Nigel Farage's argument would be that actually the problem is that the court is an activist court, that there are lots of things that they decide that have actually nothing to do with the laws, culture and governance of this country, and actually we should have our sovereignty back, which is exactly the argument that he made in regard to other aspects of our political life when it came to Brexit, which was voted for by a majority of people in this country.
Yeah, I know that, but what my point is, he could say, right, these are your human rights. And everybody would say, yeah, they're great. I love those human rights. It's taken away the rights of asylum seekers or immigrants, but he could change them. There's nothing to stop him changing the human rights that he's given us. He could change our...
Well, why can't Keir Starmer not do that? He has a large majority. You wouldn't say Keir Starmer is a fascist, would you?
No, but the human rights we have are protected through the ECHR.
Yeah, I get that. I understand that argument. But my point
cannot be changed.
But my point is, if there is a democratic mandate for Reform UK to change something, that's democracy. That's not fascism.
No, but he could say But my point is, he could change the human rights. We could be happy with the human rights he's given us, but at any time he could decide to change those rights that he's given us.
So could Keir Starmer, so could Tony Blair with his large parliamentary majority. They could make all sorts of changes to people's lives, and indeed have made many changes to people's lives that they object to, but they're democratically elected in order to do so, and they have a mandate. The point is that that's democracy and not fascism.
No, the thing is, you can't take away the rights from the ECHR. You can take other,
Why not?
other rights.
Why not? Well, if you have a democratic mandate, if you have a democratic mandate, Kevin, okay, if you have a democratic mandate to take away rights that people say, do you know what, we actually don't want this right, or we alternatively don't want to be part of the European Convention on Human Rights, we'll look at what Reform UK say, what their Bill of Rights would be, what they promise in their manifesto, and then enact if they become the next government of this country. That is democracy. That is not, you may not like it, but it's not fascism, it's democracy.
No, but why would you want to endanger yourself by agreeing?
In what way would you be endangered, Kevin? Because a lot of people feel that but hold on a second, I'll just finish my point if you don't mind. There are many, many people, Kevin, who feel that the European Convention on Human Rights is being used as an excuse by people who would harm this country to stay here. For example, the right to privacy is something that this man that reported on in The Sun tomorrow, who has committed 19 crimes. He's an Egyptian asylum seeker and he's won a court fight to stay in Britain. His right is to remain anonymous under the European Convention on Human Rights because of his right to privacy. We can go through a million individual cases. I'm not holding you responsible for the fact that he's been given an anonymity, but many people say that actually a British Bill of Rights would be a better thing, and they want that through a democratic vote.
But what I would say to that, he's using these cases as an excuse to take our rights away from us. He's saying, like he did with Brexit, he said, look, if we leave, we can take back control of our money, our laws, and what have you. And people said, oh yeah, that sounds great. Now he's using things that have happened, like people that have been stabbed or sexually abused. He's using that as an excuse to strip even more rights away from us.
But the point is that people are convinced by his argument, and if they voluntarily say they don't want to be part of a rights-based institution, which is the European Convention and the European Court of Human Rights, and instead they want what Nigel Farage is proposing, and if they say that through a democratic vote, you may disagree with that, but how is it fascism?
Because it's fascism doesn't slap you in the face straight away. It creeps up to you slowly.
I would call it democracy, Kevin, but listen, thank you for your call. I appreciate what you are saying there, and even though I strongly disagree with it, but as is always the case on my programmes, we disagree without being disagreeable. So thank you to Kevin, and I do actually Kevin said he was surprised to get on. I love to hear from people who disagree with me, because then it makes me question why, and everybody watching and listening, what we actually believe, why we believe it, and we come to conclusions based on what people say. Very, very interesting in that Jason has talked about the interview with Zara Sultana and says that she should have been brought up on her anti-Semitic rhetorical devices and past history of being anti-Israel. I haven't listened to the podcast, Jason. I don't know if Nick Robinson did that, but maybe I'll listen to it over the weekend and find out. Samara Gill is here between
Hello.
7 and 9 in this studio. You're part of what just happened as well?
Yes, for the spooky special. So do stay tuned for that.
Are you slightly concerned that the running order says Samara Gill's show and then the next one's called What Just Happened?
No, I'm not, because it's actually pretty accurate. So we're not misleading anyone, to be honest.
What's coming up in your programme?
We're definitely going to get into this Zara Sultana fiasco. I mean, comparing Farage to Hitler, she's the party that famously hates the Jews, so I don't understand where the logic is there. We're going to really get into that. We're also going to talk about Julia Hartley-Brewer's article in The Sun today. Basically, how many more crimes by migrants will it take before Starmer does something? That's a real question to ask. I think we're at a bit of a crisis point here. And we're going to be talking to Dame Andrea Jenkins, who is right now trick-or-treating with her son Clifford, but she's going to come back in her witch's outfit and do a bit of a hit for us. So, yeah, we're going to talk to her about...
I hope that doesn't keep anybody awake at night or give them insomnia of any kind.
Insomnia! I'm an insomnia... No, I won't give you guys the insomnia.
Well, you just have. You go to a few bars.
Well,
and,
she won an award for it, didn't she, last night, a couple of nights ago?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the Politician of the Year awards at the Spectator.
Indeed.
Did, certainly, yeah. Excellent. Well, that's great. And what just happened? What are you talking about? What just happened?
What just happened will be a spooky special. Obviously, we're going to talk about Meghan, Harry. We did film it before the Andrew fiasco, but there's still some very topical things in there. We're also going to be talking about Trump, everything that's going on in the US. And we will get into it with the complaints department. There are some real, I basically get assaulted on the